Security matters. Zappo Bank. The only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
No! Bitcoin! Come on, little buddy! Bitcoin! I need you! Don't go!
This is Alex. Alex spends most of his time thinking like a trader, still deciding what to do with his Bitcoin. While Alex waits for the perfect entry, this is Laura. She's watching the S&P drop. Everyone is suddenly a macro expert. She doesn't panic. This is Tom. No screens, no noise, no stress. While Tom focuses on his swing, his Bitcoin focuses on compounding. Because Bitcoiners don't want more dollars. They want more Bitcoin.
I want more Bitcoin.
The best move is letting your Bitcoin work while you plan the next one. Grow by Roxom. One currency, one place.
How about stretch preferred stock on Roxom? Receive 11.5% monthly cash dividends paid in Bitcoin.
11.5% paid in Bitcoin? How is that possible?
It's real. Stretch dividends on Roxom gives 11.5% monthly cash dividends paid in Bitcoin.
Dang! I want everyone pitching Roxom to your clients. Corporate traders, asset managers, old, young. Stretch on Roxom is for everyone.
Now that's a birthday gift. 11.5% in Bitcoin.
We are in heaven at 11.5. 11.5%. 11.5%.
Welcome back to RoxomTV. The price of Bitcoin is 61,536 infinitely printable Federal Reserve notes per coin. We are kicking off our Tuesday 3-hour marathon here on Roxom. And I would like to introduce, if you haven't met her already on one of the other Roxom shows, Azul, Roxom Zone. We're excited to have her on board. She's going to be joining us here for these Tuesday live streams. So Azul, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Walker, for having me. I'm very excited for this first one.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and dive right in. I think you're going to kick us off here today. Is that right?
Yes, I am. And I'm going to start with a story that's very close to my heart, which is a federal judge in Massachusetts just struck down President Trump's $100,000 fee on H-1B visa applications yesterday. He ruled that the charge is basically a tax and that under the U.S. Constitution, only Congress can impose taxes, not the president. Now, for the non-immigrants watching, the H-1B is the visa program that American companies use to hire very skilled foreign workers. Employers used to pay around $2,000 and $5,000 per visa application, and around 65,000 visas a year were granted. Now, in September, Trump signed an executive order raising that cost to $100,000, which is a 50-fold increase, and unsurprisingly led to a massive reduction in H-1Bs and a huge international fallout. Now, the administration has already said it will appeal yesterday's ruling, and Trump went as far as saying the ruling is actually hurting the country.
A federal judge today struck down the $100,000 fee for the H-1B visa, saying you need congressional approval. Are you going to push for Congress to do this?
These federal judges are really giving us a hard time. It's really crazy what's going on with the court system. They are giving us a very, very hard time, and they shouldn't be doing it. They're hurting our country very badly. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
But the ruling doesn't only matter to policymakers and lobbyists in DC, or even only to immigrants, because the whole US public conversation is going around this, and it's getting noisier and not always accurate. So I'm going to take some time today to go over what the former White House press secretary said on Fox yesterday. And let me play you the claims one at a time, and we'll go through what's actually true and what isn't.
And now we're learning more about the fraud within the program. One former official tells Newsweek that up to 90% of applications, 90% from India, contain fraudulent documents or involve unqualified applicants.
So the important part to know is that Indian applications for H-1B are the majority. It's like around 70% of H-1B applications do come from Indian nationals. But the claim that 90% of these are fraudulent applications comes from one person speaking on a podcast. It was a former US Foreign Service officer telling her personal story about something that happened in 2005. That means this is not a current finding. It is not a government statistic. It is only one person's recollection of work she did 2 decades ago. Now let's go on to the next thing she said.
India claim it has uncovered a network of universities that produce fake degrees which were possibly used to obtain these high-skilled H-1B visas, including one school which allegedly stole over 36,000 fake degrees, sold, I should say. It cost as little as $1,400 for one of those.
This is just misleading because, yes, a 2021 South China Morning Post investigation found that a university in India was selling roughly 36,000 fake degrees over a decade. But it didn't, however, establish any kind of connection that those specific degrees were used to obtain US H-1B visas. So the connection between the fake degrees and the visa program is being inferred, but actually having been through visa processes in the US, I highly doubt fake degree networks are feeding the H-1B pipeline. And now on to the last thing that she said.
And while these are supposed to be high-skilled employees, during almost all of Biden's time in office, 83% got junior or entry-level positions.
Now, yes, this number is true, but the framing here is important. And I'm going to bring Walker in to discuss this in a bit, because the Department of Labor wage levels go from level 1, which is entry level, to level 4, which is the most experienced. And it is true that the majority of H-1B approvals are at level 1 and 2. Now, she's framing this as evidence that the program is broken. But level 1 in San Francisco is still a Silicon Valley engineering salary. Now, these aren't workers being paid minimum wages to undercut Americans. They're early career, super talented professionals being paid extraordinary numbers by any sort of benchmark. So it's not that H-1B is importing cheap labor, because it's not cheap. It's actually US companies gathering the best talented junior workers in the world to then build the strongest and best companies in the world. Especially when you consider that over 50% of H-1B applicants actually studied in the US. That is, they contributed to the US economy for 4 years, and they trained at some of the best institutions in the world. So having studied in the US and having paid the cost of being there, I don't really understand what's not to like about these people. Now, I want to bring Walker in right now because, Walker, you're an American. I'm an immigrant that's not living in the US anymore, but I do want to get your read on this, not only about the story in itself and your take on immigration, highly skilled immigration, but also how the debate is actually being conducted in the US right now.
Yes, I think a couple of things. One, not all immigration is good. Highly skilled immigration, merit-based immigration is a good thing. Like, you should want any country, most countries at least, want to attract the best and the brightest from all over the world. You don't want to import just anyone. Like, if a country has limited resources, right? And so if you are going to have immigration, you want that immigration to be of as a high a quality as possible. I think that's a pretty, something that hopefully, probably not everybody does agree on, but we should be able to at least agree on that point, because it seems pretty straightforward. It's like, would you rather have an immigrant that is a doctor or an immigrant that is a chimney sweep? And I'm using chimney sweep because we don't have chimney sweeps anymore, but just as like two ends of the spectrum, right? Well, you'd rather have the doctor, of course. That's just really obvious. Would you rather have, a nuclear physicist, or would you rather have, a gardener, right? It's like, not saying being a gardener or a chimney sweep is bad. It's just that if you had the choice between a doctor and a nuclear physicist, or a gardener and a chimney sweep, for example, you would rather have the nuclear physicist and the doctor. That's pretty standard. Okay. The other point here, what I think is maybe missed on the H-1B side of things, to clarify, I'm married to an immigrant from Eastern Europe. Came over, took her 13 years to get her citizenship. So I'm very much familiar. My entire in-law side of the family are legal immigrants who came over and spent a lot of time and have paid a lot of money and taxes and everything else to be here. So very much familiar with this from that perspective as well. I think with regard to the H-1B thing, I think that two things can be true, right? The intent of this program initially was to bring in temporary, keyword temporary, high-skilled workers to fill certain gaps, right? To fill gaps that were not able to be filled by the existing U.S. population. That is literally the point of H-1B, right? We're agreed on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that is the point of H-1B, and it's coming out of like the Immigration Act of the 90s, right? And so, given that that is the point, I think that where people have fair and just criticisms are the fact that this, this program has clearly led to some displacement of American workers. You look at the number of layoffs from these same companies that are hiring H-1Bs, and you see that they're laying off a lot more people than the H-1Bs are bringing in, right? So they're laying off people that are American citizens at the same time as they're bringing in H-1Bs to fill junior or entry-level roles, which again, if the whole idea is that you're using this program specifically to bring in people, to bring in and fill gaps in positions that you cannot fill from the existing populace, then that doesn't really make any sense. If that was the case, if you've got people training their replacements who are being paid, and in many cases, the layoffs were people who had a higher wage level than the people who were replacing them, the H-1Bs, that really doesn't make any sense. That's kind of counter to the whole idea of the program, right? Now, again, I am pro highly skilled immigration. I would then also ask, though, it's like, okay, if this system is working properly, is it just that India accounts for 70% of the high skilled people in the world? Like they're just that far above everything, in which case you think that their own country would be in better shape. But I'm curious of your take on that. Like, do you think that the program is working as intended or that there is room for improvement?
I have to say that, speaking, I never did get to the point of having the H-1B, but I was on the F1 and I did use the OPT, which is like the year that you can work after being a student. Yep. And many of my friends have gone through the H-1B process. So first of all, I do think it is a lottery. There is a fair amount of luck, which ensures that it's not so easy as to merely wanting it and then you get it. Like the government is already putting like the extra level of being like, you have to be lucky enough to get it. And then also like, I would argue, I would be interested in seeing if there's like actual data on this, that H-1B applicants, or once you have the visa, you get paid less because you're still living in San Francisco or in New York. You still need to pay those prices. So you still need to have like a good salary. And as I understand it, many of the layoffs that have happened in tech have been of people that were making more money, that were mostly in like middle management positions. And as to why India particularly, we're at least speaking for Argentina, which is where I'm from, and I know a lot of Argentinians that have moved to the US, you don't really get, like in school, people don't tell you it's an option to do this. I feel like there are a lot of people that don't even know that you could apply maybe to a scholarship, or even the families that have the money to pay for it. There's not like a narrative around like try to get into the US university. So I do think India has like a culture of that, and maybe that's one of the reasons why. And I think it does make sense that probably, I do understand why Indian nationals would want to move to the US and not stay in India if you're like a highly skilled worker. But I don't think I do think it's to fill in a role that Americans can't do, because again, if they're not being paid less, why would they prefer an H-1B worker?
But that's the whole point, is that they are being paid less. Like that is backed up by the data that on average, H-1B workers, like there is wage suppression there. And now you can say like, well, that's not fair. These companies should pay them more. But the point is that they don't have to, because they can offer them less. There's supposed to be these it's supposed to be the prevailing wage. But of course, prevailing wage can be manipulated, right? You also see the majority, or at least a shockingly large proportion of these H-1B visas coming from distinct sets of companies and from specific outsourcing firms. So it's like, and yeah, the point to the lottery point as well, it's like, well, if it's a lottery, how do you ensure that you get the highest and best qualified people? If the whole point is to fill specific roles that need to be filled and can't be filled by American citizens, then how can you ensure that you are doing that appropriately when you have a lottery system? That would be the point there. But then again, like the wage suppression side is very well documented. And again, like I think it's an issue of like, okay, two things can be true. Highly skilled immigration is a good thing when managed appropriately. That is true, like undeniably true. And at the same time, programs like this can and have been and will be abused to the detriment of basically, everybody except the few beneficiaries. I'm not even talking about the actual, H-1B visa recipients. I'm talking about the companies that end up profiting from this, right? And so, again, I would say, the biggest red flag to me is I don't know how it's possible to say, look, these are highly skilled temporary workers that are filling a gap that we can't possibly fill. They just happen to be junior entry level, and we're paying them less than we would pay, their counterpart who was born here in America. That to me, just that's fundamentally incompatible. I mean, I'm not saying that the whole idea of the program itself is not bad inherently. It's just that the execution of it and, the incentives do matter in this case.
No, of course, I do see what you mean. And I guess just to the point of the lottery, it's taking me to this. I don't know if it was a meme or where I read this. It was this CEO looking over resumes, and he just grabbed half the pile and threw it away and just said we don't want unlucky people in the company anyway. So
that's a good meme.
Maybe that's a point in favor of it.
The other point too, I think, as it relates to Indians specifically, and this is nothing against Indians, it's just an observation, is that they very much do engage in a huge amount of chain migration, right? As a result, and again, the H-1B visas are supposed to be this temporary thing. The other issue is that this leads to a lot of permanent residency or eventually citizenship. That's not inherently bad, again. But then if you have one H-1B visa that ends up leading to 5 or 10 different people coming in through chain migration, is that the intended result of the program? Because that is the result. I'm not sure if that's the intended result. That would be another question. But again, I just come back to at the first principles level, if the purpose is to get temporary, again, that's where it's written in the law, temporary, high-skilled workers to fill positions that cannot be filled by Americans, I just don't think anybody can say with a straight face, yep, that is what all H-1B visas are. We know that's not true. If we were talking about mid-level or senior level, extremely specific things, sure. But if we're talking about a code monkey at one, insert big tech company, that's just false. And also it's India's economy and H-1B program might be about to be decimated by AI. That's going to be an interesting thing to see, because all of that grunt work in the coding side of things is getting outsourced to AI. So it got outsourced to India, now it's getting outsourced to AI. So we'll see, but I think the market dynamics around that are going to change pretty drastically.
Yeah, this might not be an issue anymore once these positions that were so necessary to be filled for less money are just going to go to a data center company. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is really interesting though. And I think, with these things, it's always important to remember that, show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome. Speaking of incentives and outcomes, and somebody who is currently in prison because the incentives around using customer funds to gamble and to slush them around between his companies landed him there, Sam Bankman-Fried is officially asking Donald Trump to let him out of prison. The FTX founder has submitted a formal application for a presidential pardon while currently serving a 25-year sentence for fraud and conspiracy charges tied to the collapse of his crypto exchange FTX. Prosecutors argue that billions of dollars in customer funds were misused before FTX imploded in 2022, leaving millions of customers locked out of their money. Bankman-Fried and his family have been working toward a pardon for months, with reports surfacing last year that his parents were actively exploring a clemency strategy while he continued giving media interviews. Also worth noting that I believe both of his parents are lawyers. So far, there's no indication that a pardon is coming. Trump has not expressed support, and nothing has been announced. So I'd like to bring you in on this. I'm not sure how closely you followed this story as it was happening, but Sam Bankman-Fried is, this guy was donating tens of millions of dollars to Democratic campaigns, and then he was also donating tens of millions of dollars to Republican campaigns through back channels. People like to say he was a Democratic donor. It's no, he was a Republican donor too. Don't worry. He just even publicly said, well, I can't do that through the normal channels because it wouldn't look good, which is just insane. But the point is he was greasing palms on every side of the aisle. He had, bribery has bipartisan support. I'm curious what you think on this though, because for me, I look at this and I see a guy like this who's begging for a pardon. If a guy like this gets a pardon, when you've got guys like Bill and Keone, the Samurai Wallet developers, who are in prison when there weren't any victims named in their trial. They were basically made an example of, even under a horrible miscarriage of justice by the Southern District of New York, to prosecute them. If a guy like Sam Bankman-Fried gets a pardon, but these guys don't, I don't know. That's just that's going to be disappointing. Would be a very kind way to put it. But I'm curious of your thoughts on this. Does Sam Bankman-Fried have any chance at a pardon from Trump? I mean, we know how pardons work, right? It's like, show me what it does for me. Like, that's basically how it works. I'm curious of your take on this.
I mean, I don't even think that you need the example of people that deserve a pardon more to be very sure that Sam Bankman-Fried should not get a pardon under any circumstance. And I don't really see in what way this would play out nicely for Trump. Like, how is this going to make him look better or do better in the midterms or in the elections? Or this is just like, there would be like a public uproar. I feel like Sam Bankman-Fried is not even like a red or blue debate. Everybody knows that he was just like, he deserves to be in prison for 25 years.
It is crazy, just the amount of just carnage that he caused. Like, it's just insane because this kind of guy gets held up as like this wonderkind, right? This like brilliant young, and he's this quirky guy, and he eats cucumbers during his interviews, and he's got funny looking hair, and so he must be really smart. And it's just like, getting put up on all the different magazine covers and things like that, that he's just this brilliant guy. Like, how is he doing it? Well, he's doing fraud. Fraud is how he's doing it. Massive, widespread fraud, and moving money between his own companies or affiliated companies. It's just insane to me. I'm in agreement with you that I can't imagine. I don't think I've heard anybody, just out there in the interwebs say like, Sam Bankman-Fried really deserves that pardon. Like, I'd really like to see him walk free. Like, nobody's advocating for that, right? Like, he'll probably get early release at some point. Granted, it was a nonviolent crime, right? Okay, like he didn't, people get less time for murdering somebody. But that being said, justice was served here, right? He was sentenced. I would really hope, and this is a drum we've been beating on this show repeatedly and on the shows with Hank, just that the thing to focus on here is the people who actually deserve pardons as it relates to Bitcoin and crypto. Because even if you're an open source software developer even if you're in the crypto space, yes, I'm a Bitcoin maximalist, but I think open source software devs shouldn't be prosecuted for writing open source code and not touching customer funds. Sam Bankman-Fried, like, this was a pretty cut and dry case. Like, he engaged in a massive amount of fraud, conspiracy to commit that fraud, cover up that fraud, all these things. A lot of people got hurt. Perhaps not physically. I mean, I don't know if people, tragically ended up taking their own lives or something, because that does happen when people lose all of their money, right? But this was like, it would be extremely shocking, I think, if Trump, the only way that Trump would do this, I'll put it this way. If Sam Bankman-Fried gets a pardon, that somehow somebody is doing some sort of favor. I just don't know if Sam Bankman-Fried has the money to do any favors anymore. That's the other question. It's like, are you still rich enough, Sam? Do you still have some Bitcoin hidden away under the couch cushion?
At the same time, like, it wouldn't be, I don't know if it's just me losing complete faith in the justice system when there is enough money in the middle, but like, even if he does get the pardon, the most likely thing is there would be an uproar for like 5 days, and then it would get buried in the news, and we would just move on, and he would be tucked away in an island somewhere, or I don't know, in a house in Massachusetts, and nobody would ever see him again, but he would be free. So like, really, what are the consequences, like the honest consequences of Trump granting him a pardon if he does get a favor in return? And it's not even just about Sam Bankman-Fried. And it's probably also the reason why people that are in less privileged positions of connections do end up being in jail for longer than they actually deserve. But that's really just the way it works. And it's not only in the US, it's like everywhere.
Sorry, microphone issue there. It's very true. And this is the sad thing about Bill and Keone and the Samurai Wallet developers, who are currently serving federal sentences, for multi-year federal sentences, I think 5 years each. They pled that down from 25 years. Again, they were trying to slap the same ruling on these guys who never literally couldn't touch customer funds. It was non-custodial. They're trying to slap the same ruling on them that they did with SBF in terms of the severity of the prison time, right? But you see these guys, and it's like, well, they don't have millions and millions of dollars to fight this. They had to go into debt for all of their lawyer fees, right? Because of an unjust prosecution. Like, that is a miscarriage of justice, and it does make you lose a lot of faith. I'll certainly lose what little faith I had in any sort of justice if SBF ends up walking free, while guys like Bill and Keone are still in prison. So yeah, for folks that have not yet, you should go to billandkeone.org. Keone is spelled Keonne. Billandkeone.org. You should sign that petition for Trump to pardon them. It's a really just tragic miscarriage of justice, and those guys deserve to be brought home. They are freedom tech developers in the truest sense of the word, and they never touched customer funds, guys. Look into the story I've had Keone on to talk about before he went to prison, and it will enrage you. So if you feel like getting a little angry on this Tuesday, go look into the story of the Samurai Wallet developers. Now there's Bitcoin, and again, then there's crypto, right? And it does seem like right now, I just have to ask the question, is Hunter Biden about to launch his own shitcoin? He's been posting some very interesting takes on X lately. In a recent post, he said, fiat is a sham, the banking class is corrupt, decentralized digital currency and the blockchain are the inevitable future, and the incumbents will fight it to death. And in a recent interview with Candace Owens, Hunter suggested he may eventually create a crypto community.
I'm saying to you about like the cryptocurrency thing. I think there's incredible promise in cryptocurrency. I believe in the, meme token. I'll do something one day to create a community, and there's really good reasons to do it. There's really interesting ways, and I know people can disagree. I just happen to be kind of like a
crypto guy.
I mean, just because of my I think it is incredible freedom in a world in which we've been controlled by banks. So if you have the same problem that I have with big pharma banks and the Fed and these like where does money come from kind of thing, is it like I truly believe in what Satoshi, kind of the manifesto of Bitcoin, but that's just me.
The Satoshi Manifesto, that's a new one to me. Now, to be fair, criticizing fiat money doesn't automatically make someone a Bitcoiner. And Hunter's post left out one important detail. There is only one truly decentralized digital security. That's Bitcoin. Everything else is, to varying degrees, someone else's project and a shitcoin. Now, Hunter Biden has not announced any crypto project, token, meme coin, or coin of any kind. But when someone starts publicly talking about building a crypto community, people in the space start doing the math. Maybe he's genuinely interested in Bitcoin and the philosophy behind it. Or maybe we're just one button press away from Hunter Coin. So I want to bring you in on this. I mean, my first thought when I saw Hunter start tweeting about this stuff was I tweeted at the time, I was like, Hunter Biden's about to launch a shitcoin, isn't he? Like this just seems like he's got some intern who is doing his engagement farming for him, saying all the right things, and then it's going to all lead to Hunter Coin. I don't know. What's your read on this? Maybe he just truly believes in decentralized digital money, or maybe he's about to try and grift big time.
So I feel like I'm here to bring him the optimism, but at the same time, I have to bring my optimism with the disclaimer that I'm like very new to the Bitcoin world, so I'm not necessarily an authority figure on my vibe here. But I do think like I am rooting for him. Like I feel like he's being very genuine, and maybe because we're not used to that level of just transparency on social media, especially coming from the son of a former president, we're very quick maybe to judge him. Also, yes, he was a former crack addict, so that's also a potential reason to not trust his judgment. But I do think there is a world where he's like the new face of American politics, and I am kind of on his side on that. Do you not think that's possible?
Boy, I mean, if he is the new face of American politics, I think we might have some problems. I mean, let's remember here that Hunter isn't just some like rags to riches. Yeah, I was a crack addict, but now I'm reformed, and I've had my hard times. It was a struggle, growing up, but now I'm on the up and up, and I'm the new face of American politics. And by the way, buy my shitcoin. Like, let's not remember he was on the board of a Ukrainian energy company, Burisma. He was getting $50,000 plus a month in 2014, while Biden, his father, was overseeing the U.S.-Ukraine policy. I mean, that's a little weird, right? He received like millions from these various what is this, CEFC or something, this Chinese corporation, these other entities, these consulting fees. He got a big diamond gift. All, this was the 10% held by the big guy type of thing. And then he's had a bunch of other strange dealings. He was on some board as well, getting paid a bunch of money for. I'm going to try to remember what the board is that he was on, but it was this like NGO, 501c3 type nonprofit thing that is, again, very strange. Like, I don't know why he would be on that. He had no experience in that kind of thing. They've got like really high level people on this board. So, I mean, I don't know. I think that he's currently probably got a PR team working with him to rehabilitate his image. Maybe he does try to run for, political office again with this, but this whole idea that like, oh yeah, he was just this guy who went through some hard times as a crack addict, but now he's reformed. It's like, well, no, he's a Nepo baby. Like, he's a product of nepotism. If you don't like nepotism, I don't know how you can get behind Hunter Biden. Like, if you believe in meritocracy, if you believe that people should earn positions that they're in, I think you should look at Hunter Biden and say, this guy is poor Hunter, he grew up with a powerful political father, got addicted to crack, was still getting paid $50,000 a month, getting paid more than most people get in a year to be on the board of Burisma, while his dad, was in a position of power yet again. And so to me, I look at this and I say, like, this is just a Nepo baby doing what Nepo babies do. I don't know. Maybe other people like nepotism more than I do. Nepotism can be good in some cases, right? Like, if, you also happen to be highly intelligent and highly qualified, then it's like nepotism might make things a little bit more efficient to get you where you need to be. But I don't think that's really the case here with Hunter. But perhaps I'm just too cynical. Maybe.
I mean, I feel like we're both extremes right now, and I'm not saying that picturing him as as an innocent Twitter user, well, ex-user, is actually what's happening. But I do think, like, the fact that he is a Nepo baby, and the fact that there probably was like were positions that he was in and he was making money, like, just purely out of the fact that his dad was in a very good position, that doesn't completely make a person, that's not all that a person is. And given that there is going to be corruption and there is going to be nepotism, and anybody who is in a position of power in the government as it is today, as it is conceived, maybe having somebody that got all of those benefits, but is also willing to ask like interesting questions and potentially stand on the right side of history on some issues, if this interest is real and he's not about to launch a shitcoin, I do think that's a win we can take. It doesn't have to be just fully good for it to serve a purpose.
And perhaps the purpose, the silver lining here is that it will, maybe it'll bring more Democrats into the crypto space to get wrecked by a shitcoin that will certainly rug. But let's see what happens. I am critical of, I've been very critical of President Trump for launching his own shitcoin, and for his wife, our esteemed First Lady, also launching a shitcoin right before entering the office. I think that was bad. I think that was distasteful, would be a very kind way to put it. I think that was blatant grifting. And I think that wrecked a lot of people. I think that, I'm skeptical of anybody launching shitcoins. Let me put it that way. Shitcoins, are a bipartisan issue, I believe. Anybody who realizes that they can just press a button and print money, it's like, I can just do what the Fed has been doing? Well, okay, sign me up. But speaking of Trump, I believe you have our next story.
I definitely do, because Trump yesterday attended Game 3 of the NBA Finals last night at the Madison Square Garden, and he was the first sitting U.S. president ever to attend the Finals game, but he was also the first one to get booed. Yeah, getting booed during the national anthem as a president. And actually, they continued throughout his appearance as the cameras alternated with cheers when they cut to the Knicks players, and then they cut back to Trump and boos again. But apparently, not even the boos were enough to keep the president from falling asleep. Now, Trump has been having an issue with this lately. And yesterday, roughly halfway through, cameras caught Trump in his suite with his eyes closed, hands folded in his lap, and head drooping slightly. Now, the footage shows him in that position for about 45 seconds before he opens his eyes with a jolt and looks around. It is now the most shared single clip from the entire NBA Finals so far. And maybe that's why after leaving the arena, Trump actually commented about the politics of the sport.
And he knows a lot about basketball, but it's good. It's good for the game.
You think the NBA
It's a tougher game.
the left wing stuff that they were getting criticized for?
Well, it's a little left wing. I think so. It tends to be a little bit left wing, but it's great entertainment. Great.
Is there an oil or gasoline price, sir, in this country?
I don't know how basketball can be left wing, but I want to bring Walker in right now to maybe help me with that question. Because maybe it's because I'm not an American or I just don't really watch basketball. Is it a left wing game?
You know, I am an American, but I do not watch basketball either. So, you know, perhaps I'm not the best judge of this. I actually think sports in general, like this, talk about a beautiful example of a meritocracy, right? This, you know, and of course, that's not to say that there can't be, you know, various forms of dealing or nepotism or somehow in sports, but generally that is one of the, you know, one of the best meritocracies we have, because it's like you either have it or you don't. I think the most extreme example of this is mixed martial arts. It's like you can either fight or you can't. And, you know, but basketball, the same thing. Hockey, the same thing. You know, personally, there are other sports I'd rather watch. You know, I don't spend too much of my time watching sports in general, though. I do sure enjoy playing them. But yeah, in terms of whether or not, I mean, I think that the comment about whether or not it's like left wing, you know, that's an interesting one, because you obviously, like, the sport itself isn't left wing. I don't think that's what Trump is saying. But if he's talking about, you know, is he talking about the fans? Is he talking about the general, you know, kind of the biggest players in the sport? Is he talking about the environment in general in terms of the owners of the teams, things like that? Like, I'm not exactly sure what he's referring to there. I think that a lot of, you know, if he's getting booed at this finals game, but a lot of the people there were not fans of him. I don't know. You know, Trump is such an interesting figure because he really, like, and just, you know, disclaimer here, for anyone who watches this show, they know I'm not like some Trump super fan, right? I find the guy incredibly fascinating. I think that he is also very hilarious. Like, I've only seen him speak live once. It was at the Bitcoin conference. And my initial thought was like, this guy is the best stand-up comic I've ever seen. Like, his presence is shockingly just like energetic and electric, and his timing is just amazing. Like, you can't teach that, you know, like that is like innate. But man, people, you really either love him or hate him. I don't know if there has been, at least in my lifetime, such a polarizing figure. It's really amazing to see just the reactions. I mean, you can attest to this too. It's like people, not to say there aren't, you know, folks like me who obviously I exist, I think, who land, you know, kind of in the middle on this. It's like when he does something good, I'll say you did a good thing. If he does something bad, I think he did a bad thing. But for the most part, he has been this polarizing figure that has really kind of, I think, like broken a lot of people's brains on both sides of this polarization, right? And I find that fascinating. I think we're going to be studying this for many years to come.
And it's happening across borders. Like in Argentina, we have Javier Milei, and he's like a tiny Trump. And I think the reason he's like, he mind blew everybody, Trump, I mean, and Milei in Buenos Aires or Argentina, is that they are not like normal politicians. Like, they just literally say what they're thinking. And for me as a journalist, like, Trump is, I have to say, it's every day he makes me laugh. So I totally agree with the stand-up comedian thing. Like, the other day, he was actually asked about the Iran war, like, hey, what's going on? Like, you guys are in a ceasefire, but there was just some shooting. And he said, well, a ceasefire over there just means like more subtle shooting.
It's hilarious comment. Dude, I hope I'm that sharp at his age. Sincerely, like I really hope that I'm that sharp. Apparently, I need to drink more Coca-Cola. I need to eat more McDonald's. I need to golf more.
Yeah.
Like, that seems to be. And I don't know. He's got something.
Which is exactly why, like, when I see him fall asleep in places, a part of me is like, you know what? Maybe he's just very efficient with his time, and he's napping when he can. And yes, like the 23rd cabinet meeting of the month isn't that important. It's fine that he naps there, because then he doesn't sleep at night. I don't know, like, I'm not there, but I do give him the benefit of the doubt, because unlike Biden, I don't think we can confidently say that Trump is showing cognitive decline of any kind. Yeah.
No, yeah. I think you're spot on there. Like, with Biden, it got to the point where it was like, when you'd see the media saying things, you're just like, come on, guys. Like, he's not sharp as a tack. This feels like elder abuse. Everybody, it's not, no one's even blaming Biden. You just feel bad for the poor guy. Like, give the man a break, you know, like whatever you think of him, like give him a break. He doesn't deserve this kind of elder abuse. You know, with Trump, it's like, okay, the guy takes a little 45-second power nap every now and then. I don't know, like I'm tired a lot and I don't run the free world, you know, so
100%.
Yeah.
No.
It's funny.
Yeah, but I do have a question for you on Trump before we move on to the next story, because he did tell reporters right after the game that the reception was amazing and that he received mostly cheers. I'm quoting here. Now, it's very obvious that that didn't happen, and also that there was going to be reports and videos that didn't happen. So why do you think politicians just keep insisting on a reality that's contradicted by what everybody else is seeing?
I think we, all of us, politicians included, Donald Trump included, we hear what we want to hear, we see what we want to see, right? So genuinely from his perspective, he may have walked in there and maybe the people nearest to him as he's walking in were cheering. You know, he's at a different section of the stands. I don't know, or maybe he's just, you know, just imagining it. Maybe in his head, everybody's always cheering. I don't know. But I think generally a good principle is like, you know, we invent the reality that we want to believe exists much of the time.
I love that, Walker. That's amazing. And actually, that really connects to the next story we're gonna see right now, because YouTube just achieved a Herculean milestone by overtaking Netflix in average daily viewing time per account. So that means that YouTube users now spend 99 minutes a day on the platform, up from 87 the year before. And Netflix users dropped from 100.5 minutes to 93. All of this means is that the global audience is now spending more time watching content on YouTube than on the platform that has defined the streaming era. Now, for me, this is great news for anybody who cared about our intellectual decline, because I feel like finally this is a trend that suggests we're not completely done with thinking. And YouTube now even represents 12.5% of all television watching in the US, which means that people are treating YouTube as they treat streaming. It's not just watching on my phone like you could do TikTok or Instagram. It's actually sitting down to pay attention to the content. And most of this content is independent because it's people creating content and publishing it directly. Podcasters, filmmakers, creators who never had to pitch anybody or never had to ask for permission to talk about anything are now finally winning the attention war. And all of this while Netflix is still producing some of the most expensive shows on the planet, and they're being beaten in aggregate viewing time by people just filming in their bedrooms. We actually saw this, and it's not only against Netflix, just Hollywood as a whole, because the hottest film right now, called Obsession, was made by the YouTube creator Curry Barker for under $1 million, and it went to make $225 million globally, outperforming multiple recent franchise releases from major studios. For me, again, this is showing that the center of cultural gravity is moving, and people are maybe no longer buying the crappy Hallmark movies that Netflix has been making lately. And perhaps in an era of AI, they no longer just want the perfect romance, they want the genuine human experience. So I'm going to bring Walker in because this is my read, again, on what I think is one of the most promising cultural news stories of the month. But what do you think about this? Because also I feel like this is very similar to the decentralization that we talk a lot about in the channel about Bitcoin. And I'm wondering if you think this could be the beginning of the end of people in positions of power telling us what to think.
I think this is a super interesting trend to watch for a number of reasons. And I think it's important to think about too, like where things were just a couple decades ago, you know, not even a generation ago, like within the generation, the broadcasting medium, whether it be for film, fictional films, whether it be for news media, whatever it was always up until very, very recently centralized. Like there were the channels, I mean, quite literally channels, on the TV, but then also, in terms of the distribution channels, they were few and they were highly controlled, right? It was a very much top-down approach. And it was a one-to-many broadcasting mechanism, right? There was no feedback there, right? It was just, Walter Cronkite read the news and you listened, and that was the news. There were only from the news perspective, only a couple of different options there, right? Literally just a couple of channels. Yeah, that started to grow. You started to have more channels even prior to the advent of, YouTube and just online streaming culture in general. And I think live streaming, when it really blew up, was kind of during the pandemic. Like that's when you really saw that. It was already on an upward trajectory, but that's when it really just exploded and took off even more. And I think there's a couple of factors at play here too. One is, of course, like the technological side of things, right? Like you and I, we are right now set up to broadcast. We can broadcast. We're right now broadcasting anyone, anywhere in the world, unless you live, in like North Korea and you can't get the internet. Basically anyone, anywhere in the world can tune in, can listen to this. We can broadcast. And there's a many-to-many mechanism now. So many different people can be broadcasting. You are not beholden to specific channels. There are no gatekeepers. Now, you can argue YouTube is still its own form of gatekeeper. It is a centralized platform still, but it does enable a more widespread amount of opportunities for anyone to get a camera or just to use this camera and supercomputer in your pocket here, this cell phone, and live stream right from it in 4K. Like that's you have a 4K live streaming device in your pocket at all times. That's insane. And so I think there's the technological side of this. There's also the cultural side. I think that as we get more, things get more and more fake, right? Especially with the propagation of AI, right? Where it's hard to know. I think people seek genuine human connection more so than ever, even though they're spending perhaps less time with genuine humans in the meat space, in the real world, but they're seeking it online more and more. And they don't want to just get Hollywood slop or AI slop. They want to know there's an actual person behind it, whether it's their news, whether it's a creative project, whatever it might be. People want to feel as though they are there with you. And so I think there's that technological component. There's also sort of the human psychological component. And I think that this trend is only going to accelerate. The really kind of, I think, one of the bullish things actually about AI, to take it on the other side, is that's a hugely playing field leveling force as well for independent creators. As you said, the ability to make a movie that's crazy. That sub-$1 million budget, 220 million across the box office, like that is insane. I mean, that's a rate of return that a multiple that Hollywood could never dream of just because their budgets are so massive, right? But even more so from the special effects side of things, it's like you or I or any random person out there can generate pretty incredible AI generated videos right now, and that are, again, only going to get better. We're still at the infancy. That's going to be very much a kind of a wrench in the gears of Hollywood's dominance, I think, because that was a huge thing. It's like, you want really incredible special effects, really incredible, like, you need a big budget for that, right? It costs a lot of money. It's prohibitive. Now it costs you, 10, 20, $100 in AI token, like you're okay. Anyone can do that. So I think I'm hugely bullish on that from a creative expansion perspective. Yeah. And I think we're going to see independent creators continue to thrive in this environment. It's fascinating to see. And yeah, I mean, Hollywood needs, clearly they need to do some soul searching, I think. It turns out people don't like the, 50th Star Wars reboot that gets shoved down their throat. Who could have thought, right?
No, Jesus. I'm personally, I'm a fan of rom-coms, and I just can't watch them anymore. They're so bad. They didn't used to be so bad. Even when you knew they were going to end up together, you kind of still wanted to watch the story. You don't anymore. And this is actually, it got me thinking, because in talking about all the AI revolution that's going to happen to all of our jobs, there's going to be way more leisure time, right? Or at least that's what tech overlords are saying, that is going to start happening as a way to maybe sell us on AI. So is the fact that, for example, Amazon Prime is now launching, I think, 3 animated series in 5 weeks. Like, they're creating 3 series in only 5 weeks. Because as you said, now AI does all the work for them. Does this mean we're just going to have way more content available, and we're going to be able to spend more of our leisure time just watching maybe like the 9th season of Game of Thrones, and I can just like prompt it and it happens, and we can create our own entertainment without needing the big studios?
So that's a really interesting question. And one thing that I think is going to happen is, I don't know if you remember like the choose your own adventure type books, like where you've got like, alternate endings, like, depending on which way you want to go. I think that you're going to kind of see that. And you actually saw, was it Black Mirror did it with, what was it, Bandersnatch, or where they had like, it was an interactive experience where the storyline changed depending, and this was a few years ago now. I think that was during the pandemic, if I remember correctly. But I think you're going to see that a lot more. And to your point, to have that be truly generative, like to have, no 2 viewing experiences are the same, because, you are basically paying to have that story created for you in real time, based on a plethora of different inputs that perhaps you provide or that are more likely scraped from what the AI knows about you, from all of the different data services that sold your information to them to craft a perfect story. And ultimately, that's just going to be used to sell you more shit you don't need. But perhaps it will also be used for beautiful creative endeavors that create new forms of kind of media that we can't even imagine yet, that are just beyond anything we could do today, right? And so I think that that's a really intriguing kind of direction that we're going in here. I think that it's also like the good comes with the bad. I think that we will also see, though, paradoxically, I think we'll see a move to people wanting more real world interactions, to wanting to spend less time in front of screens, as it gets to a point where you can get literally anything you want from your screen at any time, like just literally unending. There, you can never watch, every YouTube video that's out there, right? Not even close. Like there is so much content that is going to continue exploding. And at a certain point, I think people are going to continue to seek real world experiences more and more. In a world where everything is virtual, where everything is digital, where everything feels fake or contrived or crafted specifically to you, I think people are going to want the the harsh reality of the physical meat space more so than ever. But let's see. And speaking of the harsh reality of the physical meat space, aging is one thing that we all experience, but for the first time in history, a human patient has received an experimental therapy specifically designed to reverse aspects of biological aging. The treatment, developed in Harvard, is based on a concept that aging cells may not just accumulate damage over time. They may also lose the instructions that tell them how to function properly in the first place. The goal of this therapy is to help restore those instructions, essentially pointing the cell back toward a more youthful operating state. Back in January, the FDA cleared the first ever human trial of this approach. And for anyone picturing the sort of futuristic anti-aging infusion, the actual delivery method is rather less cinematic. The therapy was injected directly into the patient's eye, targeting optic nerve damage caused by glaucoma and related diseases. Now, this is an early stage safety trial, and meaningful results could take years. So I want to bring you back in on this. I think this is pretty fascinating. This is also just like a frontier, like what do humans need to conquer next? It's like, well, we want to conquer death itself, right? What's your take on this? Are you bullish on this kind of experimentation and just like, everything Brian Johnson's doing? Like, he's very much from a personal level been on the forefront of a lot of this, using himself as a guinea pig quite successfully, it seems. But what's your read on this?
I think it's only a matter of time before it actually happens, at least until our life expectancy is just massively increased. I do feel like we can't collectively go to space and like conquer space and conquer aging. I feel like we're going to have to pick one, or like rather billionaires are going to have to pick one. Otherwise our efforts are going to be divided and we're not really going to get anywhere on either for a long time. But I feel like it does make total sense that this would be the next big thing that billionaires want to spend their money and time figuring out. And this is probably very connected to Elon Musk's Neuralink. Because even if we don't find a way to keep our bodies from aging, I think we will find a way to keep ourselves alive. If the soul is a thing, or if it isn't, or if it can be put into an NVIDIA chip. What do you think?
I'm curious. One thing, I love sci-fi. And one thing that I find really interesting that's a recurring theme throughout a lot of sci-fi is this idea that, and this has been theorized by sci-fi authors for many decades, right? They tend to be very, very predictive in a lot, and maybe it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because really smart nerds read that sci-fi and then say, maybe I should do that, right? Elon Musk, huge sci-fi guy, right? Palmer Luckey, same thing. I think that one of these themes that you see over and over again is this idea that silicon-based intelligence, artificial intelligence, eventually runs into its limitations. And then you need some form of carbon-based intelligence, i.e. us, everything we've got going on, that inexplicable, enigmatic soul or consciousness that was so impossible to define and nail down, right? That scientists end up turning, again, from the sci-fi perspective, turning to a fusion of silicon and carbon to create, this hybrid intelligence, but that is ultimately based on some sort of carbon-based consciousness in the first place, to be able to give it that spark of consciousness that can't be created through purely synthetic silicon-based means. So that's where I think a lot of this will end up going. Again, science in many ways tends to follow science fiction, which I find just fascinating. I'm still very convinced that Elon Musk watched the movie Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger and was like, I'm gonna create a company that digs tunnels in Mars with electric cars. I'm gonna terraform the planet, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I'm pretty sure that, that's my going theory on this. But it's gonna be interesting. I mean, what a time to be alive, right? Do you think that we'll actually be the first like generation of humans that, as Brian Johnson says, like that don't die, or that it's, let's say we double our lifespan, like something crazy, some exponential or massive increase? Like, do you think that's going to happen within our lifetimes?
I think that might be your kids' lifetimes, to be honest. I don't think it's going to happen within ours. And this is all just leading me to the scene in WALL-E where the fat people get off the spaceship and they see like the one tiny plant on planet Earth. So maybe that's it's what you're saying. It all goes back to where it started, but maybe we're in the process of going all the way to the tech side of it until we realize it's really about us from the beginning.
It all comes back to touching grass at the end of the day. Like all of the comforts that technology brings us, sometimes the most comforting thing is grass under your feet and sky above you. And that is a little sunshine, and that's all you need. And with that as well, I don't get to see the sunshine for a couple more hours here today, but you are coming to the end of your time here with us. Thank you so much for joining here today. Again, Azul is going to be joining each Tuesday for the first hour of the show, so very excited to have you. Where do you want to send people so that they can give you a follow? I think you recently just changed your handle as well.
I did. It was all Hank's idea. It's it's at business as usual with 2 Z's for as usual, please, guys. It's all because of my name. Thank you so much, Walker, for having me. It's great first Tuesday to be here. Looking forward to next week.
Thank you. The pleasure was all mine. Thank you, Azul. And thank you, guys. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to have Zach Cohen from the Bitcoin Policy Institute helping us break down everything that is happening or not happening in Washington, D.C. as it relates to Bitcoin. So stay tuned. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back here with more on RoxomTV.
Some call me Chicken Little. Others, Bubble Boy. I'm a bit changed, but sounds familiar, right? Let me tell you a hard truth. The S&P isn't rising. The dollar's falling. That's the trick. Monopoly money. It's ice melting by the second. Your savings, your salary, your time. Worth less every second. Everyone's using the wrong measuring stick. Switch the denominator. Price the S&P into Bitcoin. Hard, fixed, unprintable. Suddenly your unstoppable index, it's collapsing. And while you cling to dollars, well, Wall Street already switched. Before, you needed 2 brokers.
Still getting my ninja bonus though, right?
Fuck. Plenty of spreadsheets. And my quant!
I hate this part.
I was right, and I'll be right again. If I were you, I'd thank me.
You know my name's Dave, right?
This is Alex. Alex spends most of his time thinking like a trader, still deciding what to do with his Bitcoin. While Alex waits for the perfect entry, this is Laura. She's watching the S&P drop. Everyone is suddenly a macro expert. She doesn't panic. This is Tom. No screens, no noise, no stress. While Tom focuses on his swing, his Bitcoin focuses on compounding. Because Bitcoiners don't want more dollars. They want more Bitcoin.
I want more Bitcoin.
The best move is letting your Bitcoin work while you plan the next one. Grow by Roxom. One currency, one place.
How about stretch preferred stock on Roxom? Receive 11.5% monthly cash dividends paid in Bitcoin.
11.5% paid in Bitcoin? How is that possible?
It's real. Stretch dividends on Roxom gives 11.5% monthly cash dividends paid in Bitcoin.
Dang! I want everyone pitching Roxom to your clients. Corporate traders, asset managers, old, young, Stretch on Roxom is for everyone.
Now that's a birthday gift. 11.5% in Bitcoin.
11.5. We are in heaven at 11.5. 11.5%.
forgot to mention, dividends on Roxom are paid in Bitcoin.
Stretch your income, 11.5% paid in Bitcoin.
Stretch your income to 11.5, get 11.5 in Bitcoin and Roxom. 11.5%. 11.5%.
Welcome back to RoxomTV. The price of Bitcoin is 61,589 infinitely printable Federal Reserve notes per coin. And we are joined by the one and only Zach Cohen from the Bitcoin Policy Institute here for our bi-weekly roundup on everything that is going on in Washington, D.C., the nation's swamp, our beautiful capital. Zach, how you doing, man?
Doing great, Walker. I was at the Oslo Freedom Forum last week. Incredible event. I don't know if you've been out there, but yeah, it is inspiring. You come back and you're like, Bitcoin is just really important. This is a technology that, is not just for financial speculation or, pumping our bags, but is actually like truly making a difference for some of the most important people in the world who are fighting tyranny, authoritarianism. They're using Bitcoin to resist, and no technology up to this point has allowed them to do that. So super inspiring. Yeah, no, it's a great event. If anyone can make it out there, you absolutely should next year.
I have not been able to make it to it yet. I really wanted to. And, just as an aside, I think one of the kind of biggest aha moments for me with Bitcoin early in my journey was when I started following Alex Gladstein. I started, reading, a lot of his work. And I realized here's this guy high up at the Human Rights Foundation who is going out there and making it his mission to educate activists in authoritarian regimes, to activate, to teach them about Bitcoin and to also share their stories. Like when the first time I heard like Roy Maboob's story, I was just blown away by this. And this was kind of this like clicking moment where I realized, again, you realize, oh, this is about so much more than just, hey, I'm, number go up, right? That there's this whole other side to Bitcoin that is so empowering. And then it was also kind of this crazy moment where I said, well, hold on, like, here's the Human Rights Foundation, who has pretty much like, doesn't matter if you're like red or blue, like people generally are pretty happy with the work that they do. And you've got people at the Human Rights Foundation and who work there, and then also all the activists that they support, who are going out and speaking so positively about Bitcoin. How in the hell is it possible that people like Elizabeth Warren still exist out there who are saying Bitcoin is only used by criminals? I'm like, but right here, Senator, right here, look at this. And so that was another like where you just kind of realize like, wow, we have so much work to do from the education perspective. But I don't know how much education will even help Elizabeth Warren. She may be too far gone. But really, I remember even at the last Bitcoin Policy Summit, Gladstein was there and also had multiple activists, from you guys threw a great summit there, and you've got policymakers, staffers, people, from various agencies across the U.S. government who were there attending the summit. And I'm sitting in that room. I was sitting in the front row, and you just kind of like look back around and realize like, wow, this is why the work you guys do is so important, because it's actually exposing more and more people high up in our government to these stories of, hey, look, Bitcoin isn't just this one thing. Bitcoin is a multitude of things. And look, this, in a country where we value freedom, Bitcoin is perfectly aligned with that. So I had like just like this kind of like out of body moment at the summit where I was like hearing Gladstein and Roy Maboob and others talk about this stuff in front of that room of our elected and other non-elected bureaucrats was just like a really amazing thing, I think. And it's so important for us to tell those stories because they do matter. And they matter for us as Americans because we should be supportive of that. Bitcoin is aligned with the American ethos. So aside there, but yeah, you guys throw a great event. And the more politicians we orange pill, the better. We're losing Senator Cynthia Lummis, so like we've got some work to do to make up for that, right? She counts for like 10. So I don't know how we're going to fill that gap, Zach.
It's going to be tough. But I want to double tap on something you said there, which is, Bitcoin is just sort of like exceptionally aligned with the founding ethos of the United States, right? This is, I think, we're at this interesting point. We're at this sort of precipice where in large part, like US policymakers have a decision about what the next, 75 years and beyond that even looks like in terms of technology, right? The choices between open source, open projects like Bitcoin, like Nostr, like BitChat, and between, sort of surveilled central bank digital currencies, um, censored AI, right? Like that's something that's going to be increasingly important, surveilled AI. And like I think our view at BPI right now is that policymakers have like a really, really, really important decision to make, which is, are we going to enter this next 75 years looking at technology with the American ethos, which is freedom, open, um, you know, things that are consistent with the values that we founded this country upon, property rights, etc. Or, are we going to let China, right, the token authoritarian regime, among many others, of course, decide, how the battle lines of this technology get drawn? Are we going to have open source AI or are we going to have closed AI? Are we going to have CBDCs or are we going to have Bitcoin? Like these are the questions that are like most pertinent right now. And like we need to be talking about it. And, I think HRF does a great job of that. And I think like the policymakers' position in this is so crucial because what American policymakers do truly, truly, truly informs what other policymakers around all the world decide to do. And, we know that the state is exceptionally powerful. That's part of why we Bitcoin, right? And if we can do anything to kind of ease that pressure, we should be. And I think, that's exactly what we're laser focused on right now at BPI and, really will be kind of the topic of this year's summit. So, more details to come on that very shortly.
Excited. I will likely not be able to make the summit this year, unfortunately. But I will be tuning into the live streams.
I love it.
Of that, you can be sure. And I do want to talk about kind of what you guys are, focused on. And I think that this idea of aligning Bitcoin, because it is fundamentally aligned with the American ethos, right? Or any ethos that is fundamentally pro-freedom, right? But
Exactly.
we're Americans here, so we're thinking of America, right? And America is probably the most pro-freedom in terms of a, let's say, nationalist ethos that you could have. Happy for anybody else to try and challenge us on that, right? More freedom for everyone.
Of course,
we'd love to
please.
see it. Please, yeah, overtake us in terms of love of freedom.
Yeah,
we
right.
love to see it. Let freedom ring. But I'm curious, Clarity Act has taken up a lot of airspace recently, and we can get into that a little bit. But maybe it's worthwhile mentioning kind of what else you guys are sort of focused on right now, especially as we're in a midterm year. I'm sure it's kind of tough to get people's attention a little bit, but at the same time, I wonder, are there some politicians that are maybe more receptive to these messages during the midterm year because they also see where the money's flowing?
Yeah. So good question. I think, really not a ton has changed since we talked 2 weeks ago. And that's somewhat to be expected, right? A lot of momentum was, sort of expended on getting the Clarity Act through the Senate Banking Committee, which it did, and is now, probably coming up on a floor vote. And, there will be some sort of conversations and deliberations that are had before that. And, a lot of those probably will be more kind of closed door conversations. There might not be a lot of kind of air given to those, especially, while they're kind of figuring out what exactly that's going to look like. And really, I think, the key things that are still up to debate, and we're getting somewhat conflicting reports on what exactly the battle lines are going to be, are, one, the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act, right? And obviously BRC, we've hammered this before, but this is like the purest expression of, what we were just talking about, Walker, which is, hey, is America going to sort of regulate Bitcoin or legislate on Bitcoin in, parallel with our founding ethos, which is, this pro-freedom approach. So that's like the key piece for us, obviously, and I've said that before. There's obviously the ethics issue with the Trump family, right? And the Democrats are absolutely, not absolutely, but very likely to die on that hill. And then the third issue is the stablecoin yield, which I thought had been sort of sorted out while it was still in the banking committee. It's possible, based on what you noted at the start of the episode, that that Jamie Dimon, calling Brian Armstrong I can't remember what the phrase he used was, but something vulgar and very negative, full of shit, I think. And there's potentially some pushback that's going to come there as well, and could further hold up this bill. So again, we don't really know much right now. I'm sure that there's quite a few closed door conversations being had, and important that folks continue to call their senators, let them know that they support the Clarity Act, and really the Clarity Act with the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act intact. It's really important that we keep that in there. So that's the status of Clarity. The notable thing last week was there's been some development around the crypto tax legislation. There was an initial bill that was, again, I think we talked about this 2 weeks ago, but the Parity Act and the Clarity Act, right?
Yeah.
The Parity Act being the initial tax legislation or draft bill that we saw. And at this point, I believe it's now been broken out into 7 distinct bills with different proposals in them. This is actually, I was reading earlier, something that hasn't been done in many years in Congress, where a larger piece of legislation was actually broken down into smaller pieces, and then each piece will be deliberated on individually. So a little bit of movement there, but that will absolutely not go anywhere until Clarity is done. A lot of people are saying this is kind of the third leg of the stool of crypto legislation, which being the Genius Act, which we had last year, Clarity Act, which we're still working on right now, and then Parity being the tax legislation. So that's kind of the lay of the land. I wish I had more juicy details to share with you, but we are coming up on the summer recess here pretty shortly, and should know pretty soon kind of what the status of things are.
Is the idea that Clarity will either swim or sink prior to the recess? Is that what's kind of what's been put out there?
Yeah, I think the general consensus, and again, this is speculation, is that the Democrats are more likely than not to win the House of Representatives in the midterms. At least that's kind of the view on Capitol Hill right now. If that's the case, then the only windows to pass this legislation are right now, before the recess, before everybody heads home and starts doing their midterm campaigns, or when they get back towards the end of the year. And at that point, we will know the results of the election. And, odds are, if the Democrats do take the House at that point, it's very unlikely that the legislation would go anywhere. So yeah, it seems like it's kind of now or never, unless we have a surprise with the midterm elections.
Yeah, boy, I mean, you never know with these things, right?
Oh, no, definitely not. Right.
It's a bit of a toss up. I'm curious too, just zooming out a little bit. As you guys look at this, as the Bitcoin Policy Institute, like you are, and to clarify, you guys advocate for Bitcoin and Bitcoin only. There's no crypto. You guys aren't out there advocating for stablecoins, right? You're advocating for Bitcoin, and I think that that's so important. There are other organizations who kind of advocate across the spectrum of crypto, if you will. You guys are very laser focused. And I'm curious, you mentioned, okay, maybe the Democrats are going to take over the House, right? And we know this political pendulum swings back and forth again, at least every couple of years, right? It's never completely static, but it's always, almost 50-50, right? It's just somebody's got a couple extra votes in there. But I'm curious how much you guys are worried about that eventuality. Is Bitcoin still so much of a kind of, falsely so, but just this is the perception, I think, for a lot of folks, that it's this partisan issue, that it's, that Bitcoin and, quote, crypto, let's say, have sort of been, are a Trump thing or are a Republican thing, not Obviously, that's not true, right? Nobody's stopping the Democrats from saying this is our thing. I wish they would say that, and I wish both parties would fight over who's more pro Bitcoin. I think they'll do that eventually.
Yeah.
But how worried are you guys about that eventuality, given what we know about the prior administration, also with kind of the current perspective on it? And then how do you even begin to meaningfully address that perception gap? How do you do that?
Yeah, great question. To the former, are we concerned about the, potential of the Democrats sort of gaining control over the House? I don't think concerned is the right word. I don't think there's any like imminent danger. Right. If you look at a lot of the things that were really negative for our industry, looking back at the Biden administration, those didn't come out of Congress. There maybe was the occasional kind of hearing with some, anti-Bitcoin mining fudster or, whatever it may be, but the real sort of like decisive policy decisions were coming out of the administration, right? And the administration is obviously not changing during these midterms. And so at the very least, we have another 2 years of a fairly friendly administration, right? Of course, we'd like the DOJ to sort of stop their very aggressive campaign against Samurai Wallet and Tornado Cash developers. That would be amazing. At the same time, it's worth remembering, who brought those prosecutions in the first place. So that's point one, right? Like I think we were all very hopeful going into the 2 years of Trump plus, very Republican leaning Congress that we were going to get a lot of stuff done, that we were potentially going to get a strategic Bitcoin reserve in place. And, what we saw is that these things just take a while, and this is DC, and, we're dealing with the sort of geriatric class who is like, what is Bitcoin? I've only ever seen BTC USD in my Yahoo Finance app or, whatever it may be. So in terms of like concern, no. Things could be very different in a future presidential campaign. At the same time, like, there are a lot of Democrats out there who are like decisively pro Bitcoin. We just recently talked about the American Reserve Modernization Act, which was this reintroduced piece of strategic Bitcoin reserve legislation. And there was a Democrat, co-sponsor on that bill, right? Someone who sort of defied the party orders per se and supported a piece of what we think is common sense legislation. And, he's not alone. We have Rep. Richie Torres from New York, who's been, very much friendly to this technology and was one of the original co-sponsors of the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act. So look, I think like the pendulum is shifting. I think we're going to keep doing the work that we're doing. We're on the right side of this issue, and there's going to be I think there will be residual blowback from Trump and his administration being supportive of Bitcoin and quote unquote crypto. I don't think that's going to impair our long-term ability to advocate for this technology and have America get this right. That's really like what's at stake here.
Let's talk about ARMA a little bit, which is a rebrand of updated version of the Bitcoin Act. I'm not, maybe just as a starting point, how different is it from that originally proposed Bitcoin Act that Senator Lummis had put out there? Is it meaningfully different, or is it sort of just a face level rebrand?
Yeah, so I was mistaken on this, but it actually does not mandate any buying program at this point, right? So this is a completely sort of watered down version of it, which basically just prompts a study, which is classic in DC, right? When you're sort of kicking the can on something, you propose a study, but this would sort of like remove the entire buying program, at least like in its mandate. What it is doing, which is absolutely crucial and would, I think, be like very meaningfully important, is to codify the executive order that President Trump signed in March 2025 that segregated the strategic Bitcoin reserve from the, shitcoin stockpile. And it would mandate that the Treasury Department basically stand up the necessary resources to custody and protect the Bitcoin that is already in our custody, which is, well over 300,000 coins at this point. This is crucial because, like we said, if there is a hostile administration come 2.5 years from now, we would want those coins that are already in United States custody to be protected from somebody like AOC or whoever it may be.
Please
yeah,
no.
right.
Please, please, dear God, no.
Basically, someone like that coming in and saying, "Hey, these are the Trump coins. We're gonna sell all of them." Right? Like that would be the very worst case scenario, and best case scenario being, hey, we put together this study on, basically educating people in Congress about what purchasing 1 million Bitcoin would mean for our national competitiveness, for financial inclusion, for pushing American values abroad, right? And that the support for a buying program like that would come together more sort of organically. Because the feedback that I think we've gotten is like, hey, we're just early to this. Like the Overton window has shifted very dramatically, and we should be very proud of that. But trying to convince, again, a bunch of like geriatric senators and Congress people that we should buy 1 million Bitcoin is like, it's ridiculous. And so this would be like, hey, let's take the win that we got. Let's make sure that these coins are locked up for a minimum of 20 years. And let's do the groundwork that it's going to take to convince, enough of our lawmakers that we should buy a bunch of Bitcoin.
And, can we just clarify too, does this codify basically the whole executive order? Or just those, like there's the whole budget neutral acquisition strategies, things like that. Is that also included? That would get thrown in there. So it's just kind of, putting that into law as well. It's not putting in the initial part that was part of the Bitcoin Act as proposed by Senator Lummis, which is we're going to buy 1 million Bitcoin a year or whatever it was, which was wild. But, shout out to Senator Lummis, just shoot. She's aiming high. I love it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. This is legislation to codify what was already done by the executive, and to make sure that during the next election cycle that the advantage that we've already built does not get eliminated.
Okay. No, I mean, that's the thing. It's like administrations change, congressional makeups change. It would ultimately and you can have, and I think it's maybe important to step back for a moment and say, look, it doesn't really matter if you're an American and you think, well, I don't want the government buying Bitcoin, or I don't even want the government holding Bitcoin. Governments around the world are going to.
And they already do, right?
All of them, and they already do. America, if you love America, you don't have to love the government, but if you love America, if you love the American ethos, if you love what America, the freedom that it provides, the ideals on which it was founded, which we do our best to try and live up to every day, you would want a government like America, as many problems as it may have, you'd rather them have a lot of Bitcoin than no Bitcoin, especially if, for example, China has and will continue to hold and probably grow their stash of Bitcoin as well. This is a strategic imperative for a government at this point. Do you think that it does seem with some of the talk we saw, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, we saw I'm forgetting the admiral's name, starts with a P.
Admiral Pivaro, yeah.
Thank you, Pivaro. The way that they're speaking about Bitcoin from that kind of, really Jason Lowery's software thesis seems to have made the rounds in some of those hallowed halls. So shout out to Jason. But I'm curious if you see that as sort of something that, okay, that's something that's less dependent on bipartisan support, because a lot of times, it's not like the military, it's not like generals are turning over in the same way that politicians are. So is that kind of a different angle? Yeah, we're still talking DC, we're still talking the government apparatus, but we're talking about a more, whether you want to call it deep state or the entrenched, whatever you want to call it. But is that a different animal really than let's say the elected official side of things?
Absolutely. Yes, like, Admiral Paparo, for folks who are unfamiliar or who did not see that clip from the Senate hearing, or the House hearing, is a Biden, either Biden or maybe an Obama appointee, to basically he is the leader of America's military posture against China and the larger, sort of Asia Pacific region, right? Like, this guy is huge. Like, he is just crucially important to American geopolitics, to American security. And he's not going anywhere, right? Like, he will be in this command for quite a while, and I don't know how long, but he's not going anywhere when the political winds change is the point here. And someone like this is obviously, if you look at his testimony, paying very, very close attention to Bitcoin's role in American national security, and in particular to what China is doing with Bitcoin, right? And we don't have a ton of clarity about sort of what China's position is. I suspect that our intelligence community knows far more than we do. But you better believe that they're doing something, that they're continuing to mine Bitcoin, that they're stocking Bitcoin, and that Admiral Paparo and the relevant, sort of military officials and national security officials, are paying attention to that and moving in lockstep. And that's how things really are going to move in Washington. Right? If Admiral Paparo comes out and says, hey, we see Bitcoin as, and he did do this, a tool of American national security, then Congress, like, they can't ignore that, right? They do the National Defense Authorization Act, I believe every year or maybe every 2 years. And like, part of that is making sure that Congress is like levying its resources to issues of national security and funding our, our agencies that are dealing with these issues effectively. And they can't just say, oh, well, we think Admiral Paparo is wrong about this. It's like, no, Admiral Paparo is the expert on this. And if he says this is a crucial issue for our national security and we need to be tracking this very closely, everybody falls in line with that. And so for folks who saw that and they were like, oh, okay, this is cool. Like, I don't know what a 4-star admiral is, like he's saying the American government runs a Bitcoin node. Like, cool. Like, no, this is like groundbreaking shit. This is like really the levers of power moving in DC, and that's like really, I think, been a major unlock for us at BPI, is like, who's really kind of shifting the resources, who's really paying attention, and who's going to, help America to achieve this vision of American competitiveness fueled by Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating to see, because again, a lot of these things, it's like Bitcoiners theorizing about, the game theory of these various things, for a long time, since longer than you and I have even been aware of Bitcoin. These things were probably all discussed in the Bitcoin Talk Forum. Like, basically anything we're talking about now, Bitcoin Talk Forum, it was discussed there back in the day. But to see this stuff actually bearing out, and to see these high-ranking military officers speaking about Bitcoin in this way, I mean, it's really kind of surreal, because you realize it's like, oh, they're looking into this, and they're not just blustering politicians, right? They're not going for re-election. They're not, there's, some political games they have to play probably to, advance through the ranks there. Okay, but they're not campaigning, right? They're not trying to grandstand. They're not trying to get sound bites. They're not trying to do any. They're not trying to be Elizabeth Warren. They're just trying to go out there and say, well, these are the facts. This is what we're looking at. This is why we think it's important. And yeah, we're looking at Bitcoin, right? We're looking into this. We're running a node. Like, that was crazy for me to hear. And again, that kind of thing, I think, because it can move independently of the, let's say, congressional side of things, like they're looking into it, right? They're looking into it for national strategic reasons. That, I think, has the ability to move a lot faster. Yeah, it may not be policy, but it will help to inform policy going forward. Because as you said, these are the people that are looked at as the experts on this stuff, right? They're the ones. They're the ones that get called in for these testimonies. They are the ones that will be cited as evidence of why a particular policy decision makes sense. So to me, I hope that moves the needle a little bit. And again, the taking the broader perspective, I think it's also just incredibly bullish. Again, you don't have to like that the government is doing this stuff. You don't have to support the government is doing this stuff. But I think that it is ultimately really good for Bitcoin and Bitcoiners because it also provides additional cover. It's like when the U.S. military views Bitcoin as a strategic asset, right, a strategic network. That means that the whole we need to shut Bitcoin down because it's used by criminals and money launderers. Like that becomes an untenable position. Right. You could make the counter argument that then that just opens Bitcoin up to 6102 risk, because they're going to want to confiscate all the Bitcoin because they view it as so important. Okay, I come and take it. But I think it is ultimately good because all of these things shift the Overton window more and more. And it feels as though the Overton window has been blown wide open, but I think there's still a lot of work to do. I want to kind of talk about some of that up next. We do have to take a quick commercial break. And then when we come back, we will have more about the swamp, about Bitcoin in DC with Zach Cohen of the Bitcoin Policy Institute. So stay tuned. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back here with more on RoxomTV.
This is Alex. Alex spends most of his time thinking like a trader, still deciding what to do with his Bitcoin. While Alex waits for the perfect entry, this is Laura. She's watching the S&P drop. Everyone is suddenly a macro expert. She doesn't panic. This is Tom. No screens, no noise, no stress. While Tom focuses on his swing, his Bitcoin focuses on compounding. Because Bitcoiners don't want more dollars. They want more Bitcoin.
I want more Bitcoin.
The best move is letting your Bitcoin work while you plan the next one. Grow by Roxom. One currency, one place.
Oh, I forgot to mention, dividends on Roxom are paid in Bitcoin. Stretch your income, 11.5% paid in Bitcoin.
Stretch your income to 11.5, get 11.5 in Bitcoin and Roxom. 11.5%. 11.5%.
Price of Bitcoin is 61,754 infinitely printable Federal Reserve notes per coin. And even though those Federal Reserve notes are infinitely printable and made up out of thin air, created at the press of a button, they don't even need to print them. They just print them digitally, in the words of Jerome Powell. And even though Bitcoin is absolutely finite, that it is unconfiscatable, uncensorable money that you can send to anyone, anywhere in the world, and nobody can stop you, the vast majority of the world still does not seem to care. Putting the politicians aside, Zach, we were just talking, off camera, sure. We can make jokes and say, these geriatric, octogenarian politicians, they don't get it. But, the reality is that they're not alone. The majority of people still don't get it. The majority of people have not adopted Bitcoin in any meaningful way. And it's not just the majority. I mean, we're talking like 99+%, right? We're still at a very, very, very small fraction of potential total adoption. And, you see right now, Bitcoin is about half of, or less than half of its all-time high, right? We've had a pretty brutal correction. There's blood in the streets. The vibes are bad depending on who you talk to. I'm stacking with whatever fiat I can scrounge up. I can tell you that. But I'm curious. We talk a lot about the political. What we were just saying off camera during the break is that what's kind of crazy is that we just talked about Admiral Paparo, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, talking about Bitcoin, saying that the government is looking into this stuff. We talked about ARMA, the adaptation of the Bitcoin Reserve Act or the Bitcoin Act, talking about Washington and the Clarity Act, even though that doesn't really have anything to do with Bitcoin. It's still, besides the BRCA part of it, it's still in this general arena, right? And this idea that, boy, it's, usually government moves last, right? Usually technology far outstrips the legal side of things, the governmental side of things, the political side of things, because it moves so fast. And that very much has happened. However, from an adoption standpoint, we're still so early. And, do we strangely get to this point where you've got, we already have some governments, not the US, but El Salvador has been buying Bitcoin for years now. They've, stacking a Bitcoin a day. A government, a sovereign, a nation state has been DCAing into Bitcoin while 99% plus of the world still doesn't know what DCAing into Bitcoin means. That's wild to me. And it's wild that we would, still be at this point where so many people still think, Bitcoin's a scam, or I have no idea what that is. That's one of those Sam Bankman-Fried crypto tokens, right? Or, where are we at now from your perspective, especially from your lens? You're a little bit younger than I am as well. You're in DC. I think you've got a unique perspective on this. Just even your peers. Do you see a lot of interest from a lot of your peers, folks in your generation, or is it kind of, is it still just like, man, most people just don't care. They're just a little apathetic about it.
Yeah, look, here in the United States, we have great financial services technology, right? I can send you money in 100 different ways using 10 different colored apps that all basically do the same thing and do it quite honestly pretty well, right? There's certainly inefficiencies, right? Why the hell does an ACH take 2 to 3 business days? We had the technology to do this in the 80s. But all things considered, most of our financial needs are truly met. And trying to convince, I think, people of the younger generation that they should send their friend sats instead of, Zelle or Venmo. It's just an uphill battle, right? If it wasn't the case that we had great technology that worked, I think this would be very different. And then you zoom out a little bit and you see the financial situation that most people around the world experience. Those are the places that are more primed for Bitcoin adoption, right? If you go to, whatever country that has very little banking infrastructure, and people are trying to find a way to pay for their groceries or, send money from a family member or send money to a family member who's not with them, who needs to cross kind of international borders. That's where this technology is most useful, but also where technology has been sort of slower to permeate to. And so I think that's broadly the moment that we're in is people in the United States and people in Europe, or any sort of, highly developed country, they have very strong financial infrastructure and they're saying, especially, I think a lot of people are thinking, why am I going to use this Bitcoin thing that's going up over time instead of using, my shitty fiat cuck bucks? And then you have people in developing countries who need this technology, who would benefit from it, immediately, who aren't necessarily getting obvious access to it, maybe as quickly as we would hope. So I think that's the project. I think, the reason that we work on policy in the United States is, again, because policymakers around the world are paying attention to what we're doing here. And if we can sort of open the gates to countries all around the world putting together really strong Bitcoin policy, for protecting the right to self-custody, to incentivizing people to mine Bitcoin and build out grid infrastructure and provide power to communities that wouldn't traditionally have gotten power. These are all very, very good things that are going to sort of slowly improve the adoption of Bitcoin. And it's indirect for sure. Don't get me wrong. But that's really the motivation in part. And Walker, I think another thing that I'm curious on your thoughts on is let's think about the corollary of adopting the internet, right? It seems to me like the US government was actually a very, very early adopter of the internet. In fact, they sort of pioneered the internet. And I think you're right to say, generally speaking, as a rule, policymakers or people who are regulating technologies, and especially kind of, with the system that we have in the United States, where there's these checks and balances between the legislative and the judiciary branches, that like policy is very slow to catch up to technology developing. And at the same time, like the US government is like pretty sophisticated across a lot of technological vectors. So I guess I'm curious, yes, it seems like our policy approach has maybe been slow, but to me, it almost seems consistent, right? Like we have some of the best technologists in the world working for the United States government, like some of the most sophisticated technologists and actors in the world, right? Thinking particularly about like our national security complex. These are probably people who actually get this a lot faster than other people. So I'm curious, like, does that resonate with you? And how do you sort of square that with like the larger regulatory approach?
Well, that is a really good point, I think. And maybe it ties back into sort of what we were talking about earlier, where you have, you've got sort of the elected official side of the government. You've got the, you've got the congressional side of things, but then you've got everyone else, right? You've got the, military side of things. You've got the intelligence side of things, and they tend to be, they're using the best technologies that are available. They're at the cutting edge of this because it's about war. It's about intelligence, right? You need to be at the cutting edge. So I think that's a really good point that you bring up, even about the internet. And even if we look at Bitcoin, I mean, we know that the CIA was using Bitcoin for, slush funds and whatnot for sure from its early days, right? Like they've been on top of it, right? So I think that that was a very important caveat there that, okay, the legislative side of things may move slowly. And, some of that is, kind of by design, right? But the military side, the intelligence side, there are some very smart people over there, and they pick up on these things. They are early adopters of some of these. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I think it is important to kind of to realize that. And it's interesting to me, I guess, that we're at this stage right now. I haven't been in Bitcoin that crazy long. Got in started going down the rabbit hole at the beginning of the pandemic. Like I think a lot of people, as I had more time on my hands and just you're looking up into all sorts of things you didn't have time to look into before. You wish you would have, but you didn't, right? We all get it at the price we deserve. But I'm curious too, in the US, and you were talking about kind of the US focus versus like the larger global focus. Yes, you're absolutely right. We do have, our banking system has plenty of problems, right? Tons of inefficiencies. However, it's still pretty great compared to many, compared to the majority of the world, right? And I'm talking about basically any, super developed nation has a pretty robust banking system. That's not the case for much of the global South. And that's also where you see stablecoin usage the highest as well, right? You see stablecoin usage, it's not the highest in the US, it's highest everywhere besides the US.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's a really important point. And also I did want to get your thoughts though on, okay, in the US, we have a lot of focus on Bitcoin as a store of value, right? Because again, from a medium of exchange perspective, the dollar works okay for most people, right? That's what they want to use. Now, granted, yes, can you be debanked? Can you have your funds? Absolutely. But most people just don't care. If we're being honest, most people just don't care because they're like, well, it's never going to happen to me. I'm not going to be, and it might, but until it does, they're going to think, whatever, I'm fine, right? I pay my taxes. I'm a law-abiding citizen. That's not going to happen to me. I'm a Canadian trucker peacefully protesting. That won't happen to me. I'm a presidential candidate. That won't happen to me, but it happens. But still, most people just don't care, and they won't care. So they don't use it as a medium of exchange for the most part. I'm curious if you think, especially from all that you've seen through BPI's work with HRF, and these incredible stories that you see of people, I keep coming back to Roy Maboob. That's a great, just an incredible story there. I think they even made a movie about it. Yeah. I haven't watched it yet, but I need to take the time to go do that. But a lot of these stories of using Bitcoin actually as a medium of exchange because there was nothing else for you to use. And I'm curious if you think for Bitcoin to really fulfill its, is part of the true mission of Bitcoin that it needs to be used as a medium of exchange by people, or is this something where, different strokes for different folks? The future is here. It's just not evenly distributed yet, whatever you want to say. But the idea that, look, people adopt the Bitcoin as a monetary technology, either as a store of value, medium of exchange, or unit of account in waves, basically, depending on their needs. But the broader question I want to ask is just, does Bitcoin have to be used as a medium of exchange for it to truly succeed? Or is the store of value side enough?
Yeah. I think from my view, right, like this technology um, is going to be like different things to different people at different times, right? And most importantly, like it being a medium of exchange to one person does not preclude it being a store of value to another, and vice versa. And that's like there's a beauty in that for sure, right? Um, at the same time, like I think the project of Bitcoin, right? It maybe if we can separate that a bit from Bitcoin itself or Bitcoin as it's manifested today, like the project of Bitcoin was peer-to-peer decentralized cash, right? Like this sort of um, like technology that would allow us to return to the days of like fully private transactions with one another that does not rely on a centralized intermediary, which is really like, you know, I think in my view, like the biggest technological problem that we've sort of stumbled into. Um, like technology is intended to make our lives better. It's intended to, I think, make us more free, right? That's the sort of like techno optimist view that I find personally compelling. And like the project of Bitcoin, at least as described by Satoshi in the white paper, is to give us the tools that we need to separate ourselves from these um, you know, sort of third parties that are, in my view, like really challenging a lot of the ideals that we've held for, you know, the past 250 years of America. Um, and so that to me like necessarily screams at some point we need this sort of medium of exchange bit that we're trying to, you know, pull off here to work and to work on a major scale. Um, and I think you could very reasonably make the argument that it works today, right? That I can send you money over the internet without the permission of anybody else. And so maybe we've won in that sense, and we're now just sort of protecting that. Um, I don't know. It's a tricky question, and I think, look, like the store of value use case has also become very important because of the situation that we're in. Um, you know, if you look back to 2008, right, like the genesis of Bitcoin, that was an issue of like fiat of the ills of fiat currency, right? That if there's some issue with the financial system, what's our solution? Well, it's to print more money and kick the can down the road, right? And what does Bitcoin do? It prevents that from happening, right? It prevents the people in power from stealing from the people who are sort of, you know, using the currency and who don't have control over it. Um, and so that seems like equally important, right? Maybe not quite as like central in the white paper, um, but like certainly a project worth undertaking and continuing to work on. And, you know, again, like these aren't mutually exclusive. This project is like a humanitarian project. Like I sort of come back to that constantly of, you know, it I hear people say like, hey, Bitcoin is just, you know, it's for criminals or it's just this financial speculation or, you know, they walk into it with this approach of, you know, I know better than you. This is some like silly, goofy thing that you're doing and you're probably wrong about. And to me, it's like, you know, sure, if you're like looking at it as critically as possible, if you're sort of viewing the worst in other humans, you know, you can certainly go down that path. But if you're someone who's like, hey, like I want to make the world a better place. I want to, you know, improve the lives of everyone around the world. It just seems like so obvious to me that like, hey, I should be contributing to this project that is Bitcoin, whether it is the medium of exchange project or the store of value project or just the project at large. Um, and like to be involved in this is to be involved in a like real like humanitarian battle of like how are we going to proceed into again like the rest of the 21st century? Is this going to be you know, a system of like choke point control and surveillance, or is this going to be a system of, open, free technology that empowers people, right? Yeah, sorry for my diatribe there, but I think
I love it.
But I think this is like really kind of what the question asks is like, what is Bitcoin for? It's like Bitcoin is for like making humans flourish, right? Like that's like really, I think, the mission that we're all on here.
I mean, I say amen to that. You never have to apologize for a rant or a diatribe or a digression in my presence. I fully support it. And I think that you're spot on there. And it's easy. There's I think it was maybe Gladstein himself who was maybe the first one to say this. If not, I apologize for misquoting whoever it was. But, come for the number, go up, stay for the freedom, go up, right? The number go up is or I believe he said, the number go up is a Trojan horse for the freedom go up.
That's right.
It's like, Bitcoin gets adopted because people want to get wealthier. But then that gets the Trojan horse through the gates, right? And what's inside? Well, it's a bunch of freedom. It's a bunch of freedom ready to come out and wreak havoc or make the world a better place, actually. Kind of the opposite of wreaking havoc, right? And I think that really is so beautiful. And it's very easy for us to get hyper focused on the price side of things. I know I'm guilty of it. We're all guilty of it, right? Because it's hard not to, because it's also, you can't help but look at it, right? You can't look away. But the price is the least interesting part of Bitcoin, right? It's what gives us an indication of where Bitcoin's at. It's how we measure a lot of Bitcoin's journey. It is probably the best marketing tool that Bitcoin has, is that number go up. People seeing that number go up is great marketing, right? NGU is the strongest meme. But there is so much more under the hood, so to speak. There is so much more that Bitcoin does that it enables. And, it makes, I think, I don't know if you're like me, but I know a lot of people that I've talked to in the Bitcoin space. It's like, if it weren't for Bitcoin, but I knew everything else that I knew about how broken the current system is, boy, I would be pretty nihilistic. I would not have a ton of long-term hope for the future. I'd be really worried about the world that my children are going to grow up in. Now, I'm still worried about that, right? I still want to do what I can to make the world a better place for my children, especially after I'm gone. But because of Bitcoin, I have a heck of a lot of hope. I have a lot of optimism because we have these tools. We have this technology that enables us to have something outside of government control, outside of corporate control, to have something that is truly free of that. And that is beautiful, I think. And I think we are entering an era where we will see unprecedented abundance. And that's going to be an incredible thing. It's going to break a lot of the fiat monetary models that are out there, that rely on, hey, we gotta keep inflating away the purchasing power or everything breaks. But we have Bitcoin. People have an escape hatch. They have a lifeboat. They have whatever you want to call it. They have a way out. They can opt out freely at any time. But it's like, you can lead a pleb to water, but you can't make him stack sats, I guess, as the old saying goes. I'll work on that. I got to get a better one. But Zach, we're coming up on the end of the time here. Really appreciate you coming on, as always. You're on here every other week with us here on RoxomTV. People should go and follow you, Zach Cohen _ right, on X, if I'm not mistaken.
You got it. I've said it enough times now.
I know. I've typed it enough times. You've said it enough times. And where can people go? I know you mentioned the policy summit. I know you're not ready to announce dates yet for it. But people should be, maybe this is an announcement of an announcement, so to speak.
Yes.
Okay.
As hesitantly as we do those, we will be having a summit this year again. It will be our 4th annual Bitcoin Policy Summit. And yeah, it's going to be a great event. More details to come soon. So that's the pre-announcement right there.
And I do recommend that people, if you have the ability, if you have the the means to travel there, go and check it out. It's a really, for me and for Carly, it was an incredibly eye-opening experience to see what you guys. We went there. I've only been there 1 year. We'll unfortunately not be able to make it this year, but look forward to attending the year after. But it's really a fascinating experience to go there. And part of it is what you guys, I don't know if you did it in the prior years, but what you did this year, this Day on the Hill, where actually you get Bitcoiners together to actually go and talk to staffers, or we got to actually talk to some senators, and to really try and advocate for Bitcoin, try to frame it to them in certain ways. You really get a peek under the hood, though, and you see what you guys are up against. I already had a lot of respect for you guys. Oh, dear Lord, it gave me even more respect for the patience that you guys have as well in dealing with this. And it made me even more convinced that what you guys do is incredibly valuable, is incredibly necessary. Again, I've said this before, I'll say it again to you. I would rather have a government full of Senator Lummises than Senator Warrens. And I think most folks can agree with that, right? So yeah, people should go once the announcement becomes not an announcement of an announcement, but an actual announcement of dates. People should go and check that out if you can make it. Really interesting. Great time too with Bitcoiners, but really high signal presentations, well-structured event, a lot of fun, a lot of learning happening. And yeah, get a peek behind the curtain and go try to orange pill some politicians in DC. It's a fascinating experience.
Hell yeah. More details to come soon. I believe we'll be doing Day on the Hill again, which was super fun. And yeah, if you're interested in our larger work at BPI, our website's btcpolicy.org. You can read some of our latest research. And we are a nonprofit, and so any donations are tax deductible and are much appreciated. So if you're so compelled, that would also be amazing.
Fantastic. Well, Zach Cohen, thank you for joining here. Thank you and the folks at BPI for all that you do. Always like these little powwows that we get to have here. No offense to Elizabeth Warren by saying powwow. I hope she's not offended by that. Okay, that's about time for a commercial break, I think. So guys, again, go give Zach a follow, Zach Cohen _ Bitcoin Policy on Twitter, btcpolicy.org. Look out for the announcements of the Bitcoin Policy Summit and donate if you can, if you want a little tax write-off. Always a good opportunity to do so. So Zach, thank you so much. And guys, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we are going to have more Bitcoin and world news right here on RoxomTV. So stay tuned. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
Some call me Chicken Little, others Bubble Boy. I'm a bit changed, but sounds familiar, right? Let me tell you a hard truth. The S&P isn't rising, the dollar's falling. That's the trick. Monopoly money. It's ice melting by the second. Your savings, your salary, your time. Worth less every second. Everyone's using the wrong measuring stick. Switch the denominator. Price the S&P into Bitcoin. Hard, fixed, unprintable. Suddenly your unstoppable index, it's collapsing. And while you cling to dollars, well, Wall Street already switched. Before, you needed 2 brokers.
Still getting my ninja bonus though, right?
Fuck. Plenty of spreadsheets. And my quant!
I hate this part.
I was right, and I'll be right again. If I were you, I'd thank me.
You know my name's Dave, right?
Security matters. Zappo Bank. The only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Bitcoin! Come on, little buddy! Bitcoin! I need you! Don't go!
This is Alex. Alex spends most of his time thinking like a trader, still deciding what to do with his Bitcoin. While Alex waits for the perfect entry, this is Laura. She's watching the S&P drop. Everyone is suddenly a macro expert. She doesn't panic. This is Tom. No screens, no noise, no stress. While Tom focuses on his swing, his Bitcoin focuses on compounding. Because Bitcoiners don't want more dollars. They want more Bitcoin.
I want more Bitcoin.
The best move is letting your Bitcoin work while you plan the next one. Grow by Roxom. One currency, one place.
How about stretch preferred stock on Roxom? Receive 11.5% monthly cash dividends paid in Bitcoin.
11.5% paid in Bitcoin? How is that possible?
It's real. Stretch dividends on Roxom gives 11.5% monthly cash dividends paid in Bitcoin.
Dang! I want everyone pitching Roxom to your clients. Corporate traders, asset managers, old, young, Stretch on Roxom is for everyone.
Now that's a birthday gift. 11.5% in Bitcoin.
11.5. We are in heaven at 11.5. 11.5%.
Welcome back to RoxomTV. The price of Bitcoin is 61,861 infinitely printable Federal Reserve notes per coin. And in North Korea, a country under the most aggressive sanctions regime ever imposed on a modern state, it is also happens to be growing faster, allegedly, than the United States and Europe. According to the South Korean Central Bank, their data shows North Korea's economy grew 3.7% in 2024, its fastest rate in 8 years. That is more than Los Angeles or Chicago built in the same period. Satellite imagery analyzed shows the country now glows, roughly 3 times as bright at night as it did just 5 years ago. Important to point out that that was basically pitch black, but hey, something is better than nothing. So how exactly does the world's most sanctioned nation pull this off? Well, first, it became Russia's munitions supplier. Since 2023, North Korea has shipped enough weapons to Moscow to generate more than $10 billion. 15,000 North Korean troops have also been deployed to Russian front lines in Ukraine, with about a third killed or wounded, compensated largely in military hardware and weapons components. Second, monthly trade with China. Chinese consumer brands are openly operating inside North Korea in direct violation of the international sanctions. Third, hackers. North Korean state-backed operatives known as the Lazarus Group stole more than $2 billion in cryptocurrency in 2025 alone. The FBI called it the largest financial theft in history. U.S. sanctions policy has operated for decades on the assumption that economic isolation would eventually force North Korea to negotiate away its nuclear program. That leverage depends entirely on the isolation actually working. But now that 2 of the world's largest economies, Russia and China, have decided it doesn't need to, North Korea has a functioning arms export business, a growing trade relationship, and a state-sponsored hacking program. Now, this is interesting. I do think it's important to point out here, despite this growth, this doesn't end up actually benefiting the people of North Korea, right? The people of North Korea are trapped inside an open-air prison. That's what that entire country is. It's the reason it's very difficult to actually defect from North Korea. It's incredibly dangerous to actually get yourself smuggled out if you can manage it. You are quite literally risking life and limb. It's a little bit strange, it's usually countries that have a lot going for them don't have to forcibly keep their citizens locked inside those countries. It's also, I think North Korea is probably the most, let's say, interesting example, or at least the most modern example we have of communism versus capitalism, or, pseudo-communism versus pseudo-capitalism. Let's say different ends of that spectrum. And you see this when you do look at those aerial photos we mentioned earlier in the story here about the glow of lights from North Korea shown by satellite imagery increasing threefold. If you've never seen the pictures of North Korea at night, it's quite shocking. There's nothing there. I mean, there's a little bit in Pyongyang, right? But if you look at it compared to South Korea, which is lit up like a Christmas tree, and then in North Korea, you have literally almost complete darkness. It's, of course, you might ask yourself why. They're on the same Korean peninsula, right? They're the same people, relatively speaking, right? But they're all Koreans, just different ends of that peninsula. Why is it the case that South Korea is so much more developed? And you look at the standard of living in South Korea compared to North Korea, and the Korean War was not that long ago, right? Somehow South Korea has leapfrogged, gotten so far ahead of North Korea from a development perspective, from a trade perspective, from a general human flourishing perspective, right? Why is that? Well, it's because North Korea is communist and South Korea is not. It's very easy, actually. I know I beat this drum a lot, but communism doesn't work. Communism results in untold death and societal destruction. Communism is a bad idea. It may sound like a good idea, the first time you read the Communist Manifesto by Marx. And for those commies out there listening, have I read it? Yes, I have. Many, many times, actually. Because I really like to understand how somebody could possibly read through all of that, then look at all of the recent 100+ years of history and the 100 million+ people who have died as a result of communism and think that communism is a good idea. It's not. again, it results in death. 100 million plus, conservatively, 100 million people, a little over that, very conservatively, have died because of communism over the course of the last century. This isn't just, me spouting political talking points or anything like that. These are facts. Even the most conservative estimates, again, put it at about 100 million dead between various communist regimes. It doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. It's anti-human. It is against human flourishing. It is against freedom. It is against just basic human nature, right? But for some reason, people keep trying it. And people in the West, it's like, if you love communism so much, why don't you try to immigrate to North Korea? Just see how that works out, right? Let's not forget Otto Warmbier. This is maybe before some of your time, but Otto Warmbier, who was, I don't know why he decided to do this, but he was touring North Korea. And at one point, I believe his very heinous crime for which he was subjected to basically hard physical labor in a gulag until the point where he was on the verge of death, and then they brought him home and he passed away tragically. He ripped down a sign or stole a political sign, something like that, something silly, right? It's insane. This is not a free country. Now, are they actually growing as much as they are? The South Korean analysts are allegedly saying they are. Perhaps. Of course, again, trade, free trade with other nations. That's not so much a communist ideology, right? The whole idea of communism is that you can do everything yourselves, right? That you will everything is owned by the people. But now, of course, we know that in communism, that's not ever actually how it works out, right? It's never the people that are in charge. It's always just the group of the party elites at the top. In this case, the supreme leader over there, and they benefit while everybody else struggles and starves. You can even look at from what scant data is available, just the growth rates, right? Turns out when people don't have enough meat to eat, they don't have enough good food to eat, they're forced to eat mostly a lot of slop because, their communist nation can't produce enough food through its central planning. Their growth gets stunted. You see that happening as well. People are on average taller in South Korea, right? And this happens very quickly. This happens over the space of a generation. It's quite remarkable. Now, we'll see what happens. Perhaps North Korea will become a communist utopia, the communist utopia that was promised by Marx, right? The workers of the world uniting and creating a beautiful utopia where everybody has enough, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. But I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, what each of us needs most is freedom. But hey, that's just me. Call me old-fashioned, right? Moving on. Earlier this year, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage made a major bet on Bitcoin, putting more than £200,000 of his own money into a Bitcoin-focused company, Stack BTC. The company is led by former UK Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng. RoxomTV's Connor Septon had Kwarteng on his show this morning and asked him about Farage's recent scandal involving a gift of £5 million to a crypto billionaire. Let's go ahead and take a look.
Treasury company, and that's what we're doing.
So it often seems that politicians who do have an interest in Bitcoin only end up really acting on it when they're out of office, like out of Westminster. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's very difficult, to pursue particular interests when you're in government. The other thing that people don't understand about government is that when you're a minister for transport or a minister for energy, you're focused on that brief.
Yeah.
You're not suddenly all of a sudden going to be necessarily championing crypto digital assets when you're the minister for transport, because that's really outside your your ministerial brief. So it's difficult to pursue interests that are outside the narrow ministerial brief. I was Chancellor Exchequer briefly. I was very interested in digital assets. I think that's an area where London and Britain could be falling behind. I think we've got to get ahead of this. But yes, it's much easier when you leave politics to pursue whatever interests you have. You know, I don't have a brief. I can decide what business interests I want to pursue, and this is my principal focus at the moment.
So, of course, the exception to this is Nigel Farage, isn't it?
Sure.
Now, he's been interested in Bitcoin for years. I interviewed him at a conference back in 2022.
Yeah.
And of course, he has been under a lot of scrutiny over this £5 million gift from
That's
Christopher
right.
Harborne. Now, he's been heavily involved in Stack. Is there a risk that he damages Stack's brand?
I don't think so. I mean, I think we've got to be very clear about his role in it. I mean, he's an investor, and you know, this came up, you know, when he announced his investment. And actually, the rules are very clear. I mean, as an MP, if you put more than £70,000 into a company, a stock, you have to declare that. My understanding is that he has declared it. It's certainly public. And then the rules are very different when you become a minister. There's that you either offload your stock, or you put it in a trust, or subject to oversight, you can keep it. But those are very separate rules from those of being an MP. And at the moment, he's just an MP. People speculate about whether he's going to be Prime Minister or what have you. But as of June 2026, he's a backbench MP. And that's and as far as that's concerned, his investment in Stack is public, declared, and pretty uncontroversial.
Yes, and I'm sure that he's following all of the disclosure rules. My question specifically was about this controversy involving Christopher Harborne, though. Like, will he still be involved in Stack and appear in your videos going forward?
So look, we don't have any plans to include Nigel in any videos in the immediate future. We've got to focus on our day job, which is running a good public company, and also looking after the interests of the shareholders, and also pursuing our strategy of buying good operational businesses within the ecosystem, the digital assets ecosystem, and that's our principal focus. I'm not particularly interested in using Nigel in a kind of PR way at all.
So no immediate plans. I'm assuming is that linked to what's been happening?
No,
there?
not at all. Okay. I mean, we were very clear that obviously it was quite exciting him being an initial investor. I've got on with him, even though we're in different political parties. I've always found him very easy to get on with, very approachable. He has a passion for, as you pointed out, for Bitcoin. That didn't just emerge, 2 weeks ago or 3 months ago. He's been interested in this for years. He's interested in gold. He's interested in the debasement of currencies that we've seen through fiscal pressures. He's interested in all those subjects. He's obviously a former city trader, so he's got some exposure to precious metals and other commodities. And he has a genuine interest passion for markets and for investment. And I think it's good to welcome people like that as part of your investor base.
So the controversy could have political ramifications, though, couldn't it? Because it's attracted a lot of media interest. £5 million is more than most people will see in a lifetime. Reform has many pro-Bitcoin policies, lower capital gains tax, being able to pay your taxes in Bitcoin, for example. Because of what's been happening and because of the scrutiny he's received, do you think it's now less likely that these policies would become law if Reform won the next election?
Look, so my own view, I'm a conservative, and with my political analysis hat, if you like, I think Reform will probably struggle to win a majority.
Right.
It could be the largest party, I can see that. As far as I can see, it'll be very difficult for any of the political parties in Britain today to get a majority at the next election. And I always say, let's cross that bridge when we come to it. But I think in terms of digital assets policies, this is part of innovation. This is part of the modern world. And I think any political party that is interested in innovation, that wants to see Britain at the top of that league table in terms of innovation, will have very pro-digital asset, pro-innovation, pro-new technology policies. And I think digital assets is very much part of that story.
Yes, and I think many Bitcoiners would argue that this should be a bipartisan issue, or it should not be a partisan issue.
Shouldn't. I mean, I've said publicly that it doesn't matter who the government is. We've got to work with whoever the government is to make sure that Britain can be a leader in this new exciting industry.
That being said, though, we saw Donald Trump run on a pro-Bitcoin policy, during his presidential campaign. Farage has been doing the same. Is there a risk that because of the close association that Trump and the Republicans have had to Bitcoin and that Farage and Reform have had to Bitcoin, other parties won't want to touch it?
Well, I think that as time passes, day by day, there's more acceptance and understanding that digital assets are here to stay. I mean, I remember times 12 years ago, people were losing Bitcoin. I mean, exchanges were losing physical Bitcoin, as it were. And I think that the prognosis then was that digital assets were a fad, they would disappear. Even as late as 2022, in the aftermath of the Sam Bankman-Fried FTX debacle, people said this was over. It was over. Digital assets were over. It was dead. But they've still survived. They're here. Bitcoin has been around for 17 years. Not that long a time, but it'll be around for forever, I think. And there's no, in my view, there's no chance that we're going to go back to the world that existed before digital assets were around. So we've got to move with the times. We've got to accept innovation, and we've got to get behind it.
So Stack has actually faced some criticism from within the industry. There's a quote that I'm sure you must have seen. It was from Ian Taylor of Crypto UK. He said, "The fact it's got Quasi and Farage tells people like me, don't invest in it. I would question the quality of the management. Crypto assets are highly volatile. People should be doing their due diligence on their financials.
Yeah, of course they should.
The quality in the management."
Yeah, I agree with that.
You do agree with that?
I agree that people should do their due diligence. I don't agree with the personal remarks. I mean, but people can take things as they will. We've got to make sure that we've got a fundamentally good, sound underlying business, and that's what we're doing. People can take me or Nigel or whoever and throw sticks and stones at us. I think what will drive the price is obviously the Bitcoin, our fundamental thesis about Bitcoin, and also the quality of businesses that we buy. Now, I'm in politics, so people throw brickbats at one the whole time, individuals and personal stuff. That's not relevant to me. I don't think that's relevant. I'm much more interested in the thesis behind Bitcoin, the innovation it represents, and actually getting fundamentally good businesses that can generate cash to buy the Bitcoin.
So I do want to talk about politics, but the last question on Stack, you were mentioning that you're looking to acquire businesses that might be adjacent to digital assets. What sort of businesses, you don't have to say what business.
I'm not going to say, no,
but what type of business?
But you look at the modern world, and I don't know this Ian Taylor chap, I don't know where he's come from or who he is. But you look at the modern world, you look at the developments of the last 20 years, you've got AI, which is absolutely extraordinary. The fact that you need data centers and they need energy, and the fact that that's a way of generating cash flow in terms of hiring them out. The nature of the economy is changing at the rate of knots. And I think if you're running a digital assets treasury business, you've got to think very hard about how your business, your innovative business, can plug into a fast and dynamically changing world in terms of tech, in terms of innovation. And I think there are opportunities in that.
So are we talking like exchanges, miners, companies that accept Bitcoin as a payment method?
Our main focus, two things. One is obviously the Bitcoin adjacent DAT space.
All right, and we're back. Thanks for checking out that clip with Connor. Thought that was a really interesting conversation. He did push him pretty well. I also think it's fascinating the way that we see politics intersecting with the Bitcoin space now. And of course, politics and let's say the corporate side of things have intersected for a very, very long time, right? That's natural. But as Bitcoin becomes a greater part, as it becomes integrated more into the, let's say, TradFi ecosystem, we're going to see this more and more. I think it's also a good reminder that, people like to try and paint, for instance, Bitcoin as in the US, speaking as an American here, paint Bitcoin as this Trump thing, right? Or say, this particular politician is attached to this thing. And I'm sure, you hear some of that, happening in the UK as well. You see that happening everywhere, right? People will often, when there's something, a technology that they, especially a monetary one like Bitcoin, which is quite unique, that they don't understand, will try to paint it with the political brand of whatever politician has been involved in a scandal or has somehow endorsed it or whatever it may be. I would just like to remind people that, you can't stop anyone else from using Bitcoin. Bitcoin is money for enemies. Whatever you think of any particular politicians who happen to be using Bitcoin, you can't do anything about it. That's the entire point. I have, no knowledge. I'll leave that to Connor and the experts over there in the UK about these particular circumstances. But I think that, Bitcoin is money for enemies because Bitcoin is money for anyone who wants to learn about it. I think that it's also very intriguing to see folks who were, if I remember correctly here, Chancellor of the Exchequer, which sounds, very fancy. Everything sounds fancier over there in the UK, especially when said with a British accent. But you see these people who worked in government and in the financial parts of government specifically, really understanding, or at least, understanding to a pretty high degree and starting companies around this stuff, understanding Bitcoin or digital assets, shitcoins. It really is amazing how far that, we talked about this earlier with Zach, how far that Overton window has shifted, how much it's been blown wide open, how much that this is, not just, magic internet money for magic internet nerds anymore. Again, Bitcoin is money for anyone who's willing to learn, who's willing to put in time. You may not like that, current or past or future government officials, bureaucrats will get into Bitcoin and start, doing things in and around this ecosystem. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, I think that all of these things are good for Bitcoin. They're good for Bitcoin because they drive Bitcoin adoption in different ways. Personally, the Bitcoin adoption I care about, I use Bitcoin as a store of value. I use it to protect myself from the unlimited debasement of fiat currency that will eventually drive every fiat currency, US dollar included, to zero over a long enough time horizon, because every fiat currency throughout history, every fiat currency will fail, has failed, will fail, is failing in slow motion around us, or sometimes fast motion through hyperinflation. I also use Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. I use Bitcoin as a medium of exchange because I want to, and because it is a more simple way for me to do certain exchanges of money, especially cross borders, right? And I also use Bitcoin as my personal unit of account. I think there's a point that everybody reaches in their Bitcoin journey where you start to denominate the rest of your life's expenses in Bitcoin. At the beginning, this is true for me, it's true for a lot of folks that I've talked to. At the beginning, you're looking at Bitcoin and you're pricing in US dollars, right? I'm not saying that I don't look at the US dollar price. I'd be lying if I said that, right? I absolutely do. Yes, I've got the chart open right here on my phone in front of me, so I can tell you guys how many infinitely printable fiat cuck bucks Bitcoin is worth at any given time, right? So yes, I look at the charts. Yes, I still think about Bitcoin from a fiat denominated perspective. But the flip happens when you start thinking about all the things that you buy with fiat in a Bitcoin denominated perspective. When you start thinking about, any wealth, any, cash that you have in fiat, you start thinking about it as the opportunity cost of not owning Bitcoin. Now, let me also be clear. That is not to say that you should only ever stack Bitcoin and you shouldn't do anything else, and you shouldn't have any sort of creature comforts, and you should live as a hermit. A possession, you will own nothing, you will stack Bitcoin, you'll be happy, right? I'm not saying that. That's maybe for some people, depending on the point in your life that you're at, especially if you're a little bit younger, you're just coming up, you're trying to start to build wealth. I'm certainly trying to build wealth, but I also have a family, right? I have a growing family. I want to make sure that my wife is comfortable, that my children are comfortable, that they have a nice life. There's the opportunity cost with that too, because the point of Bitcoin is not just to hold Bitcoin forever. The point of Bitcoin is to let you do whatever the hell you want. The point of Bitcoin is to have money outside of government, money separated from state. The point of Bitcoin is freedom, ultimately. That's the point, the freedom to choose. Now, I do everything I can to, the reason I earn fiat, the reason I work very hard is, yes, to buy Bitcoin, but also so that I don't have to sell Bitcoin. I like to spend Bitcoin. I don't like to sell Bitcoin. I like to spend Bitcoin and then replace it immediately with more fiat if I have some available. But I don't like to sell Bitcoin. But you also shouldn't feel bad about selling Bitcoin if you need to do it to materially improve your life. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with doing things, with using Bitcoin as money. It's kind of the whole point. Again, you know, if you die with a heap of big old stack of sats that never got used, like, what's the point in that, right? If you pass it on to your family, your children, okay, that's fantastic, right? To be able to leave a legacy, to be able to do something to build up the next generation so that they can stand on the shoulders of giants. That is admirable, and I appreciate that, and that is my plan as well. But also, my plan is to make sure you don't forget to live, right? Don't forget that the point of money is not just to accumulate money. The point of money is what it can buy you. A wise man I don't remember who originally said this, but a wise man once said that the point of money is not to hold it. Nobody wants money. You want what money buys you. Sometimes it buys you time. Sometimes it buys you things. Sometimes it buys you experiences. But ultimately, money buys you optionality, buys you choices. Bitcoin is the greatest optionality from that perspective. It is the money that provides the greatest optionality because nobody can stop you from spending it. So with that slight digression aside, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be right back here with more on RoxomTV. So stay tuned. Don't touch that dial. We'll see you in just a moment.
This is Alex. Alex spends most of his time thinking like a trader, still deciding what to do with his Bitcoin. While Alex waits for the perfect entry, this is Laura. She's watching the S&P drop. Everyone is suddenly a macro expert. She doesn't panic. This is Tom. No screens, no noise, no stress. While Tom focuses on his swing, his Bitcoin focuses on compounding. Because Bitcoiners don't want more dollars. They want more Bitcoin.
I want more Bitcoin.
The best move is letting your Bitcoin work while you plan the next one. Grow by Roxom. One currency, one place.
Imagine a constant Bitcoin cash flow. How about earning BTC every 2 weeks? Now you can buy Strive and Stretch on Roxom and stack Bitcoin every 2 weeks. That's the Bitcoin paycheck.
Welcome back to RoxomTV. The price of Bitcoin is $61,899. Infinitely printable Federal Reserve notes per coin. India is celebrating after all 24 Indian crew members aboard a burning tanker in the Gulf of Oman were safely evacuated. The vessel reported a major fire while operating one of the world's most strategically critical shipping corridors. Indian and Omani authorities say all crew members were airlifted to safety. And the story quickly became front-page news across India, with officials publicly thanking Oman's emergency services for their rapid response. The rescue comes amid sharply elevated tensions across the Middle East and growing risks to commercial shipping in waters near the Strait of Hormuz, where multiple merchant vessels have been damaged or attacked in recent months as regional conflicts continue to bleed into key maritime routes. For India, though, this story is about more than one ship. The country has one of the world's largest populations of merchant mariners, with hundreds of thousands of Indian citizens working aboard international vessels. As geopolitical risks rise, New Delhi has increasingly invested in the infrastructure of protecting its nationals overseas, coordinating with foreign governments, naval forces, and diplomatic missions in ways it historically did not. The successful evacuation of all 24 crew members is a clean win, and India is taking it as one. Also in India, India's largest IT services company says it plans to deploy as many AI agents as it currently has human employees within the next 3 years. Tata Consultancy Services, TCS, is a company with nearly 6,000 people. Its chairman, N. Chandrikasan, said that the day is not far off when TCS will operate hundreds of thousands of AI agents alongside its human staff. The company describes the strategy as a human plus AI model. The announcement comes as businesses around the world race to integrate generative AI into everything from customer service and software development to research and back office operations. TCS says demand is already translating into real revenue. The company is generating more than $2 billion in annualized AI-related income. With Chandrasekhar Karan emphasized that AI should be viewed as an opportunity rather than a threat, he also acknowledged that TCS is unlikely to hire at the same pace it did during previous growth cycles. That comment is drawing attention across India's technology sector, which has traditionally relied on large-scale hiring to fuel expansion. I think this is quite interesting. You heard me hint at this earlier when I had Asul on the program, but I believe that India's economy, especially some of the outsourcing based part of that economy, a lot of U.S. work, and not just the U.S., of course, but I'm speaking from my U.S.-centric perspective, a lot of, let's say, technical grunt work gets outsourced to India. A lot of call center stuff gets outsourced to India. Note that guy who says his name is Steve is not, in fact, in Iowa. He's over there in New Delhi. But I think that their economy is going to take quite a massive hit from this. Now, that doesn't mean you can see already that TCS is generating $2 billion a year in additional AI-related revenue. So there's still going to be revenue there, obviously. But there's going to be a massive glut, a huge overabundance of workers that are not going to have anything to do, because it turns out that call center work is very easily automated by AI. You may have even heard, I had this experience recently, called into a customer service line to schedule something around the house, and I didn't realize, actually, it was pretty good. I didn't realize it was AI at first. They had put in background noise for the person I was talking to. They had put in background noise that sounded like a call center, right? It had had different clicks, different people. And even when the AI would pause and you'd hear typing on their computer, it made the experience very realistic. It took me like a whole 10 seconds to realize, okay, nope, this is AI. They got me. But it was pretty good, honestly, better than the experience I have with most human customer support agents. This is still just the beginning of that. It's going to get infinitely better. I may not even be able to tell when I'm talking to a human. Odds are I probably won't be. This time I caught it fairly quickly, but they did get me right at first. And if you've had that experience where, again, they make it very much sound, it's not just the old automated voice we're used to. It was very real. It was very natural, much like speaking in voice mode to any of the different AI frontier models. If you do it with ChatGPT or with Grok or whatever, the AI voice is getting much, much smoother. They're adding in a lot of natural human things. They throw in the ums and the uhs, and in this case, they threw in the background noise. They threw in the clattering on the keyboard. They threw in the, some people talking over here. So it sounds very realistic. Call centers are going to go away. The whole point was that you could do this stuff cheaply. As soon as the marginal cost becomes cheaper for AI call centers than it is for human ones in India, bye-bye to that whole industry, right? Not saying that it's going to totally go away. Some companies will still make sure that there are humans somewhere that are able to answer the phone, but you'll probably need a lot less of them, right? Because most of the calls will be able to be fielded by AI agents. And then on the software development side, it's like all of that technical grunt work, sort of the low cost but high time requirement. It takes a lot of time. It's kind of that, it's not, the cutting edge stuff. It's a lot of sort of the back end stuff. It's the setup. It's none of the sexy stuff. It's kind of the stuff that has to be done, but in the background, right? To still make sure everything works. But, you could just hire out, outsource it to India, right? Or wherever else. A lot of that's going to go away because a lot of that's just going to get automated out by AI, because one developer will be able to have multiple agents just doing all of that grunt work for them that they would have previously needed to outsource. And that goes away too. So it'll be really interesting to see how much this affects some of, particularly India and their kind of outsourcing based economy there. I'm going to be following it closely. We'll be following it closely here on RoxomTV. If you are following closely, I ask that you bear with us for a moment as we go to a quick commercial break, but we're going to be back with another story here in a moment about Hunter Biden. The scuttlebutt is that perhaps, and I may have created said scuttlebutt, many people are saying this, though, a lot of good people are saying this, and Hunter Biden's about to launch a shitcoin. Is he rehabilitating his political image? Did he outsource his social media to India? Who knows? Only time will tell, but we're going to tell you what I think here in just a moment on RoxomTV, so stay tuned, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back here with more on RoxomTV.
Some call me Chicken Little, others Bubble Boy. I'm a bit changed, but sounds familiar, right? Let me tell you a hard truth. The S&P isn't rising, the dollar's falling. That's the trick, monopoly money. It's ice melting by the second. Your savings, your salary, your time. Worth less every second. Everyone's using the wrong measuring stick. Switch the denominator. Price the S&P into Bitcoin. Hard, fixed, unprintable. Suddenly your unstoppable index, it's collapsing. And while you cling to dollars, well, Wall Street already switched. Before, you needed 2 brokers.
Still getting my ninja bonus though, right?
Plenty of spreadsheets. And my quant!
I hate this part.
I was right, and I'll be right again. If I were you, I'd thank me.
You know my name's Dave, right?
Security matters. Zappo Bank. The only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Bitcoin, no! Bitcoin, come on, little buddy, Bitcoin, I need you. Don't go.
This is Alex. Alex spends most of his time thinking like a trader, still deciding what to do with his Bitcoin. While Alex waits for the perfect entry, this is Laura. She's watching the S&P drop. Everyone is suddenly a macro expert. She doesn't panic. This is Tom. No screens, no noise, no stress. While Tom focuses on his swing, his Bitcoin focuses on compounding. Because Bitcoiners don't want more dollars. They want more Bitcoin.
I want more Bitcoin.
The best move is letting your Bitcoin work while you plan the next one. Grow by Roxom. One currency, one place.
How about stretch preferred stock on Roxom? Receive 11.5% monthly cash dividends paid in Bitcoin.
11.5% paid in Bitcoin? How is that possible?
It's real. Stretch dividends on Roxom gives 11.5% monthly cash dividends paid in Bitcoin.
Dang! I want everyone pitching Roxom to your clients. Corporate traders, asset managers, old, young, Stretch on Roxom is for everyone.
Now that's a birthday gift. 11.5% in Bitcoin.
We are in heaven at 11.5. 11.5%. 11.5%.
Welcome back to RoxomTV. Is Hunter Biden about to launch his own shitcoin? Well, Hunter's been posting some interesting takes on X lately. In a recent post, he said, "Fiat is a sham. The banking class is corrupt. Decentralized digital currency and the blockchain are the inevitable future, and the incumbents will fight it to the death." And in a recent interview with Candace Owens, Hunter suggested he may eventually create a crypto community.
I was saying to you about like the cryptocurrency thing. I think there's incredible promise in cryptocurrency. I believe in the meme token. I'll do something one day to create a community, and there's really good reasons to do it. There's really interesting ways, and I know people can disagree. I just happen to be kind of like a
crypto guy.
I mean, just because of my understanding. I think it is incredible freedom in a world in which we've been controlled by banks. So if you have the same problem that I have with big pharma banks and the Fed and these like where does money come from kind of thing, is it like I truly believe in what Satoshi, kind of the manifesto of Bitcoin. But that's just me.
Oh boy. Now, to be fair, criticizing fiat money obviously doesn't automatically make someone a Bitcoiner. And Hunter's post left out one important detail. There's only one truly decentralized digital currency. That's Bitcoin. Everything else is, to varying degrees, someone's pet project. Now, Hunter Biden has not yet announced any crypto project, token, or coin of any kind. Yet. But when someone starts publicly talking about building a crypto community, people in the space start doing the math. Maybe he's genuinely interested in Bitcoin and the philosophy behind it. Or maybe we're just one press release away from Hunter Coin. Earlier today on RoxomTV, the host of Bitcoin Matrix, Cedric Youngelman, joined RoxomTV's Hank Hudson. Listen to what he had to say on Hunter's new crypto perspective and his appearance on Candace Owens.
There's no, maybe the Cypherpunk manifesto, which has preceded Bitcoin and Satoshi by a long time, maybe that's what he's referring to. That sounded like someone who'd been prompted and is trying to like grab and grasp jargon really quick and just seed it. And I mean, how can he not look at what the Trump kids have done and how much money the Trump family has made? And that's the total addressable market for anything he does in that. And so, of course, maybe some crypto coin is some BS coin is paying him and to go on tour and campaign, and they're going to facilitate a coin launch soon. And maybe he can make $10 million or $100 million. It's the more time you spend with someone, the more you find out whether, what they're saying is legit or not. It's kind of like when I got to spend an hour listening to Trump talk uninterrupted. It's a better read than sort of the edited versions and that you get fed by the news. And so that was a little bit spending more time with him and getting to hear him speak so kind of new, but with such conviction about these things, right? And that he's the anti-big bank, big pharma, Fed. I mean, his father is the long-running senator from Delaware. His father has helped preside over that's where every one of the big banks and the pharmaceuticals incorporate in Delaware. He is, I mean, at best he's gonna go into sort of the George W. Bush role of I'm the not so smart son, who you want to drink a beer with or smoke crack with. They're dressing him like the everyday man. They're giving him sort of that rebellious, I'm into crypto and I'm into sovereignty and I'm anti the banks. But how can I believe that if you're the son of Joe Biden, Senator Joe Biden, 40-year senator from Delaware?
Yeah. All right. Now, okay. Couple of things on this. Cedric is spot on. One, just a couple of red flags that jumped out at me. Quote, I believe in the meme token. What the fuck does that even mean? I believe in the meme, I don't know. First of all, the sentence doesn't make any sense. I think Cedric is right that this sounds like somebody who has been prompted. This sounds like somebody who was told, listen, you say this and this and this, and then, crypto Twitter will start following you. And, and then once you'll get in their algo, be on their timeline. And once you launch your coin, boy, you could net 10 mil, 50 mil, 100 mil easy. And then we dump, it's totally fine. It'll be great. You'll be super rich now, plenty more money for crack, and you'll be good to go, right? All of your, art projects, and maybe Hunter is a phenomenal artist, but have you looked at the revenue he made from some of those art sales? Shockingly expensive sales. Boy, while his dad was president, it's almost like somebody was trying to buy favor. I don't know, but I'm probably just a conspiracy theorist. The other huge, obvious red flag is the Satoshi manifesto, and Cedric called this out with Hank as well. Nobody who has spent you just have to listen to not even one Bitcoin podcast. You have to listen to one person who knows what they're talking about Bitcoin say Satoshi. It's Satoshi. Like, I'm pretty sure, you know who the other person who said Satoshi was? Jamie Dimon. I'm pretty sure he actually knows it's Satoshi, but he says Satoshi just because he's, he's pretty quick. You don't get to where he is without being pretty sharp. You don't get to be Jeffrey Epstein's banker without being a pretty clever guy. But if you say Satoshi, that's just I just immediately know you're full of shit, right? And you haven't looked at this for more than like 30 seconds, or you read the briefing that somebody else sent you in advance of your shitcoin launch. And to call it a manifesto again, Cedric is yet again right. Nobody has called the white paper a manifesto. No, nobody, because it's not. It's a white paper. It's the Bitcoin white paper by Satoshi Nakamoto. Everybody knows that. Like, even Elizabeth Warren can probably say Satoshi. Actually, well, maybe. But this all just feels super astroturfed. Talking about the blockchain, right? Anytime it's like fiat is a sham, the banking class is corrupt. Okay, yeah, agreed. Decentralized digital currency and the blockchain are the inevitable future. Anytime someone says the blockchain and they're not like there's one the blockchain. It's Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the blockchain. But he's not talking about that. Decentralized digital currency and the blockchain. Like, this is shitcoiner speak, right? This is shitcoin talk. We know this. This is all just too convenient. And maybe he's taking a leaf out of the Trump's book. Maybe he's like, you know what, boy, they made a buttload of cash launching these shitcoins, these meme tokens. I want in on some of that action, right? And who can blame them? There's one thing you realize, and I haven't been in Bitcoin that crazy long, right? But there's one thing I've realized, even when you're in a space where you are, I don't know what I'm a podcaster, I guess, right? Feels like a dirty word, but yes, I'm proud to say it. I mean, I'm a podcaster, and now I'm a broadcaster too. So both a podcaster and a broadcaster here on RoxomTV. But there's one thing you realize is that it becomes very easy. Like, if I look at my filtered DMs, the amount of shitcoin projects that you get pitched to pump, and yeah, we'll give you this or that, or we'll pay you that. It's insane. You get past a certain number of followers on X, they start flooding in. It is super easy to make money if you have dog shit morals or no morals at all. It is super easy to make money if you're willing to grift people. It's really easy. Not hard at all. What's difficult is making money while still adhering to some principles, while not trying to grift people, while not trying to screw people over. And that's the thing about Bitcoin. Like me saying there's a reason Bitcoin is the only thing I will advise any friends, family, loved ones to invest in. And still, their decision, do what you want. I don't care. But here's what I would say. You should own some Bitcoin. I don't recommend, even though I own like some MicroStrategy, I don't recommend that people invest in it because I'm not willing to. I'm not willing to recommend a security, right? I'm willing to recommend Bitcoin because I know that nobody can control it. And also, they can know that them buying a little bit of Bitcoin, them stacking some sats, it's not like that's pumping my bags and then I'm going to dump those bags. That's not like I'm looking to dump bags in them, right? It's like I'm looking to grow my own Bitcoin bags. And I think that's the fundamental difference. It's like shitcoiners pump shitcoins because they want to dump their bags. Bitcoiners pump Bitcoin because they want to grow their own bags and they want other people to grow their bags because a rising tide lifts all boats. And Bitcoiners realize that Bitcoin is fundamentally different. It is the separation of money and state. Money and state have already been separated. Bitcoin did that. When Bitcoiners tell you, you should buy Bitcoin, and maybe we don't always do it in the best way, and maybe we say some mean words, sometimes some hurty words, and maybe we're not always the most tactful, and we can be better with that. But why do Bitcoiners evangelize? Why do Bitcoiners try to orange pill? Why do Bitcoiners go out and shout it from the mountaintops that like how amazing Bitcoin is and what it will do for humanity? Because we believe it. And because it's true. Because Bitcoin itself is true. It is a truth machine. Bitcoin can't lie, and Bitcoin doesn't care. Humans can lie. They lie all the time. Hunter Biden, just a big old Nepo baby, but whatever. Maybe he's turning over a new leaf. Maybe he's not going to launch a shitcoin. Maybe he's going to come out as a hardcore Bitcoin maximalist. And the reason, guys, and I'm sorry to the producers because I was probably supposed to get into another story, but I need to go on this for the remainder of the time because I think it is really important. So, Victor, I apologize in advance. The reason that you can actually believe what Bitcoiners have to say is because we don't benefit by you buying a marginal little amount of Bitcoin, right? It doesn't matter. Somebody pumping a micro cap shitcoin, they literally do benefit. They are literally looking to dump on you. They were probably issued the tokens in some sort of backroom scheme. They probably got DMs on X that asked them, hey, will you tweet about this a couple of times? We'll give you a bunch of the tokens. You can dump them when the price is going to pump this amount. You'll make this free money for you. You just have to tweet a couple of times. It's just your ethics, which don't exist. Just your morals, which you don't have any. Just your reputation, which you don't care about. That's why you can actually believe, like, Bitcoiners are trying to help you. And we don't always go about it the right way. We're not perfect. We're human. I certainly, I've made plenty of orange pilling mistakes in my day. And I've realized that, again, you can lead a pleb to water, but you can't make them stack sats, right? Everybody needs to get into Bitcoin when they're ready. I've adapted my approach to how I approach friends and family about it. But why? Why do other Bitcoiners want to get their moms, their dads, their loved ones, their close friends? Why do they want to get them into Bitcoin? And this is the fundamental difference here between Bitcoin and crypto and all of these other shitcoins. There's Bitcoin and there's shitcoins, but the fundamental difference between the people who are telling you to buy Bitcoin and the people who are telling you to buy shitcoins is that the people telling you to buy Bitcoin aren't trying to exit their position at your expense. The people telling you to buy Bitcoin are telling you to buy Bitcoin because they know it is changing the world in front of your very eyes and you just don't see it yet. The people telling you to buy shitcoins are literally trying to dump their bags on you. That's what they're doing. You need to understand that. If you're watching this show, hopefully you already do. But it's an important thing for us to frame, because how many of us, when we've been trying to orange pill a friend or family member, it's like you tell them about Bitcoin, and then a little while later they're like, oh yeah, so I finally got some crypto. I got some insert shitcoin. And you're like, oh, no, please no. Well, I saw on Instagram that, some guy was saying that I'm not even going to say the names of any of them, but it could go to, $10 or $100 a coin or 1,000, or maybe it'll be more, maybe it's the new Bitcoin. This is the thing. Crypto is a grift. These shitcoiners are grifters. Whether Hunter Biden becomes a shitcoin grifter remains to be seen. I hope he doesn't. I hope he doesn't grift people. I would rather see people make money and create value, make money by creating value through honest means, not by just doing fiat on steroids, because that's what crypto is. It's just fiat taken to the logical extreme. Everybody can print money costlessly. Marginal cost of production is zero. And that's what the value is. It's zero. Yes, subjective value theory, sure. But look, nobody wants your shitcoins. Everybody wants Bitcoin. The shitcoiners pumping you their shitcoins are just going to turn around and buy Bitcoin with your cuck bucks that you gave them right after they rug you. That's what they're going to do. Okay. Guys, sorry I didn't make it to the last story. But it's okay. TLDR, SBF wants a pardon. Fuck him. Pardon my French. SBF wants a pardon, though. Instead, what Donald Trump should do is not pardon SBF. He should pardon Samurai. He should pardon Bill and Keone, the Samurai wallet developers. Go to Bill and Keone, KEONNE.org. You can sign that petition. You can share. You can donate if you are able. But sharing is free. It costs you nothing. Just like, creating a shitcoin costs you nothing. Except this is actually for a good cause, right? And there's no shitcoins involved. Just Bitcoin. Just open source developers. So there, we covered the last story too. Okay, guys. Sorry, I always get a little bit fired up when we start talking about shitcoins because I think about the value destruction that happens. I think about the absolute grift that exists in that ecosystem. And it's a shame that it still gets lumped in there with Bitcoin. But you know what, Bitcoiners, if you're here and you're listening to this show, I know that you're out there advocating for Bitcoin. I know that you're trying to bring your friends and family on board, not because it's going to enrich you, but because you want them to make it. That's why. So cheers to you guys. Cheers to the Bitcoiners. Shitcoiners, you know where to shove it. Hunter Biden, don't launch a shitcoin. Just don't do it. Bitcoin only, and that's that. All right, guys, thank you for joining me here today. Again, my name is Walker America. You can find me here on RoxomTV every Tuesday from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm also on Hank's show, Hank at Roxom, every Thursday and Friday. Azul from Roxom, you saw her at the first hour of my show. She's going to be joining here for the next few episodes here on my Tuesday stream. Really looking forward to that, getting her perspective on things. And make sure to follow RoxomTV, follow Roxom, follow me, Walker America. Check out our other shows here on Roxom. And at the end of the day, remember, don't shitcoin, kids. It's bad for you. Okay, guys, thanks for joining. Thanks for sharing your scarce time with me and with RoxomTV. And until next time, stay free.
Imagine a constant Bitcoin cash flow. How about earning BTC every 2 weeks? Now you can buy Strive and Stretch on Roxom and stack Bitcoin every 2 weeks. That's the Bitcoin paycheck.